G'day, guys. Good to see you. You all? Yeah, I was just having some audio problems. Sorry. Had to sort of get out of the studio, then come back into it, and it sort of sorted it out. I just couldn't actually select my current mic for whatever reason. It's crazy things. Yeah, never things do not work. I don't know what it's. They do have a comment on StreamYard and a number of the other ones that there's a lot of traffic nowadays, and it seems like setting things up or slowing things down. It's been causing a whole lot of mayhem. Oh, there we go. Another sort of little yeah. So yeah, sorry to say, if you do notice those sort of little sort of hiccups or whatever, yeah, it's plus it didn't help. I didn't get enough sleep last night. That's why I overslept in the morning and sort of got up late and sort of realised, I just managed to get onto Bart's sort of stream. Anyway, let's get going. Pretty much. Enough time to start roast chicken before stream. Yeah. Why not? Yeah, yawns. Just lately I've been a bit crook, just on and off and stuff like that, and I just haven't been getting enough good sleep and all that, so I've been really feeling a bit on the rat shit side. Yeah. G'day, Augusto. Doesn't help when you don't get enough sleep. And I've also been sort of, because of social isolating and staying at home, and in the evenings I've been watching all these sort of old series of TV programs and all that, some sci-fi stuff and whatever, and I've been going beyond my normal time schedule, so I think I need to stop that, because it's not a very healthy thing. Sleep is important, I know that, but yes, I've been a bad boy in terms of sleep. Yeah, I haven't been getting enough. Yeah. Just go through a couple of these until we hit any questions. That was just me. Me and my setup problems. Setting up milk and cheese. That's Jared. Yes, I don't know what time he'll be arriving. No idea. I just send him a link, and whenever he turns up, he turns up. It's just our sort of arrangement. So if he doesn't turn up because he's got some family issue or something that he has to deal with or whatever, so be it. Oops. Okay, I'll just quickly go through the hello everyone as well. Yes. Mayhem, and the stream temporarily froze. Yep, that's StreamYard for you. I mean, they've got a comment, like when you first get in, they say, well, this could happen today. You may have some issues and all that. So, what can you do? It's just, one of those, g'day, mate. Just have to put up with it. Freezing power. Actually, where's that? I did. Thanks for sending me that other one with the milk. I should bring that up. Yes, not getting enough raw milk. Yeah, hopefully it doesn't freeze. Okay. Okay, so they just have notified me. Yep, yeah, that's how I feel with the first one. Definitely pasteurized milk at work when you have to have a coffee and you've got no option. Yes, sort of the magic effect of raw milk. Thanks for that, Luke. Oops. Don't know why that is actually. It's actually just holding on to it for some reason. So if you see comments just holding on, it seems like they're going to have a few other different sort of issues today. Yes. Yeah, I was watching actually the old the Voyager episodes. Yeah, you know me too well. I'm nearly at the end on season 7. Yeah. Yes. Misspent youth. And I still haven't given up on that side of things. Nothing like cooking something on a slow roaster. Yes, yes. Hi, Harry. Did you make any inroads into researching what light we can use in our homes instead of LEDs? No, I haven't yet. I haven't had a chance to speak to my mate to look at options of getting cheaper stuff. So, yeah, that's still on sort of hold at the moment because of social distancing and all this sort of stuff. And he can't access some of these people, which doesn't help. Yeah, so can't do much about it. There's a couple. There is a company, and because I basically want to try and actually, they do sell some stuff, but I'm trying to get better source sort of stuff. So I don't want to recommend things that are going to be too out of the range for most people. But if he doesn't get back to me and we can't really do anything at the moment, what I will do is I will basically just show you what the other options are for people that can afford it, and I'll keep it at that. But at this stage, I'm trying to see whether I can get those better options. It's always difficult when you're relying on third parties and other people. It's key. I take cream with me to work, Harry. Okay. Yep. That's a good idea. Yeah. I'm probably a tight ass and it's free, so yeah. I probably shouldn't. I have taken cream once, but the problem is, people basically, don't respect you, unless you've actually put a label on it. People just think they can use yours or whatever, and so that's the downside of working with 50 other people and not being able to have a separate fridge for yourself. Yes. Blue light, the blue light frequency. That's what it is. So blue light spectrum, and the basically, it's fine in the daytime because in the middle of the day, that's when the highest level of blue light exists. But as you're basically moving towards the evening, where you're moving towards near infrared type frequencies, you basically don't want it because it inhibits melatonin production. It's a signaling your body gets. There's receptors on your skin, in your eyes, which are called melanopsin, and they detect these frequencies of light. And so if you get, the old incandescent lights had much less of that, so had less of an inhibitory effect. And so if you want good quality sleep, you need to lower the blue light spectrum, that frequency, that because otherwise you can't get deep sleep because you're inhibiting the melatonin production. So that's not good. Key. Thanks, mate. I should probably get one unhealthy cream for them and one healthy cream for mine, and just change the label. Just put trans fat cream on mine, so that yeah, or something like that, or somehow hide it. Yes. I sort of get the cream that I use at home is basically from cows that are grass fed, so it's pretty good in that regard. Yeah. Yes, he does. He's a good supporter of this channel. Yeah, and I thank him for that. Yep, you're welcome, mate. Appreciate all the support from people, turning up. Yep. Yes, cream is definitely delicious. Most people always forget. Oops, just lost my spot there for a moment. Okay, would you partake in a non-violent protest to defend your liberties? Yep. I mean, if the government's after this virus issue were to keep some of this legislation there, definitely I'd be protesting. That's just not on. If I wanted those sort of restrictions, I'd move to China or North Korea. Just write heart attack juice on it. Yeah, that would definitely keep them away. They're so brainwashed. Yeah, that would definitely have an effect. Any thoughts on phytosterols in avocados? Is it okay to have on a carnivore? I would not. Basically, you don't need. Why would you need avocado? Not necessary. The fat is highly monounsaturated fat, but tallow is as well. 50% of tallow is monounsaturated. So you get enough from animal products in terms of the fats and all that, because that's the only reason why people have it as another source of fat, easily digestible fat and stuff like that. So unnecessary. If you there are three reasons people would consume them. One would be the fat. One would be the phytosterols, because they think they're actually healthy, which they're not. And the third reason would be basically because of potassium. But the reality is, as I've said, you only need 1.5 sort of, the amount of the, in the micrograms of that they quote in the RDAs, but I actually base it on the energetics, the amount of calories you require. So if you require, let's say, 1,700 calories to support yourself, 1.5 is about 2,500. It's not 4,700. You don't need that level of potassium. That's too much. You only need high potassium because basically it gets depleted with carbohydrates. If you're on a carbohydrate diet, it's different. It's like a lot of things. B1, you need double the amount. There's a lot of things that are very different. Magnesium, you need shitloads more when you're on a carbohydrate diet for carbohydrate metabolism. When you're on, you get more than enough from meat sources, animal products. So, no. And if you're having basically like I do, I have a lot of, quite a bit of dairy in my diet. That means I'm getting too much potassium. Like the Maasai, they use blood to get back the actual electrolytes, balanced. So I have to use, not only do I have to consume basically quite a bit of quite a bit of salt on my food, but I also have to basically consume some water with salt for that reason, because I, especially on the days that I consume more milk, because raw milk has a lot of potassium, very little sodium. So you've got to be very careful in that regard. So that's another one of those, why people say, if you're on like a keto diet, don't have a banana, have avocado. And avocado has twice the potassium levels of a banana in that regard. But the phytosterols are not healthy, because what the phytosterols do, they go into the red blood cells and they basically harden them. See, human cholesterol is basically soft and flexible. Plant-based sterols, phytosterols, which is basically these, is a plant-based version of it. And that's where it should stay. And if you basically stiffen your red blood cells, they can't get in, penetrate in large enough quantities to oxygenate, those peripheral areas or certain parts of the heart, which have got very thin and narrow sort of blood vessels. Not all blood vessels are the same size. They have this sort of, they end up having, they're not completely round either. And so they have to have the flexibility to change, to, elongate their shape to basically slide in to those thinner vessels. So the last thing you want to be doing is putting this sort of garbage into your red blood cells. Not a good idea, especially when it's a small quantity. Large quantity is an issue. So, the more you add, the less flexibility you've got, the less better oxygenation you achieve. So, not a bloody good idea at all, especially if you've got existing narrowing of your blood vessels from, being on a SAD diet, in the past. The last thing you want is inflexible to get through those narrowing areas in your basically arterial sort of tree. So, yeah, not a good idea at all. Hope that sort of answers about that. A bit of a tangent there. Different to, exactly, different to the supermarket shit. That's true. That's unfortunately, the reality. Most people are really consuming pretty much very piss poor stuff. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Protests in the US at Capitol. Yep. Look, there are better ways that this virus could be managed, but I think that was poorly managed in the beginning, and that's why things really got out of hand. And while I sympathise with some of those people, I also think that a lot of them are putting themselves at, probably they are at the moment, because there is definitely a lot of social distancing and all that. I'm not against social distancing. Actually, I'm a bit of a supporter of social distancing. But at the same time, it has its moments, and there's either an overkill or an underkill in that regard. And like any society, even China, they've got positive things as a society, a number of things that they do much better than other societies. So, you can poke at any society. What my issue is I don't like a state being, I actually believe, as everybody knows on this channel, I don't believe in any of the states, whether it's the US empire, China, the way they run their society, or any society. Pretty much I believe in direct democracy, so I have a completely different model. I don't think we need politicians to run our society. We never did for millions of years. We were in tribal camps and we made decisions amongst ourselves, and we had a moment in history where citizenry had direct control over power. So that's what I believe in, and it does work. you know. But it means that citizenry has to be also more responsible as well when it comes to society. But usually when you've grown up in that sort of society where you're involved, you do become more responsible. It's like anything, it's the way you socialize. If you socialize in a certain way, you start behaving in a certain way. You socialize with certain people, you start behaving more like them. It's just the way it is. So to say it's impossible, it's just nonsense. We've done it before. So it's not impossible, but it's a teething problem in terms of transition. But anyway, let's get back to this. I had 3 glasses fed steaks with raw butter and sprinkle 3 types of cheddar cheese on top, and now I need a nap. You've eaten too much. Bit like that guy. Yeah, the probably difference is the quality of what you've eaten is probably different than that guy that Bart was showing today. That was a bit funny. I mean, yeah, TV shows. I mean, I don't watch much TV. To be honest, I sort of watch a lot of things which are basically like certain shows or movies or stuff like that, or documentaries. A lot of documentaries primarily. I would say half of what I watch are documentaries, not even YouTube videos. It's usually a lot of documentaries because they're so informative. You can learn so much. If I'm going to waste my time, I try to maximize what I can actually learn. Not that I don't want to entertain myself now and then. That's, yeah, but yes, my sister's there. My youngest sister moved to WA. Yes, nice area. I have visited Perth before, but I haven't it's probably quite a few years. It's probably, what is it now? The last time I was in Perth, 12 years ago, a long time. I think things have probably changed quite a bit since then. Yep, I mentioned that earlier. Cover that point. I often hear a small number of people have their loss of carnivore keto, which goes away with some carbs. Hair loss. Yep. On a Western. Look, I can't stop it fucking growing, mate. I can't stop it fucking growing. It's not the carbs, It's a dish, sufficient protein and the nutrients. How do you support a healthy thyroid? Well, let's just think of it. We need protein, meat. We need zinc, meat. We need selenium, meat. We need, copper. You find in meat. You need, all these sort of things. You need cholesterol. Yep, meat again. On and on. Most people on a keto diet that lose their hair are getting insufficient protein or insufficient fat, one of the two, because they're missing out in some of the fat-soluble vitamins, or they're missing out in certain minerals and all that, or they're eating foods like too much dairy, and they're not getting certain types of nutrients, or they're eating too much seafood maybe, or too much chicken, in particular chicken. Chicken is pretty good with some, like MK4 is very high in chicken breasts, but a lot of the other nutrients are not that high, so, you may be missing out on some of these nutrients. It's really nutrients, because at the end of the day, the body needs to build, what all these things are here and all that. They're all made of protein. If you don't have enough protein and you don't have enough of the micronutrients that are required, not going to work, to convert basically, for that T4 to T3 conversion, you need zinc and selenium. Most people are deficient, or not eating enough eggs, or organ meats, which are very high in selenium, or not basically, getting enough zinc, because they sort of have a fear of too much protein for whatever reason, or tend to fast for too long. Excessive fasting, not a good idea. I mean, I do a 16-8, sometimes 14-10. and it's just time restricted feeding. So I eat within light, within the best times, but I don't basically reduce my calories. I still have sufficient amount of nutrition to support my body functions. It's just basically people, become too catabolic. They become really weird. They cut back on protein. They cut back on fat. They go into this sort of crazy mode of basically, I want to lose as much weight in very catabolic state. And that's fine if you want to do it as a short term. But if you do it in a way where you haven't basically depleted your glycogen properly, you haven't basically put yourself into that deeper state of ketosis and then upped those calories again, then you're going to have problems. Because even when I was in deep ketosis, I didn't have any hair loss whatsoever. When I dropped in 6 months 15 kilos, I did not have any hair loss or thinning or anything like that. At one moment, even my actual the lady that cuts my hair, she actually commented that basically how thick it was. So, and I was just consuming a bit more meat than normal in that period and getting a bit more. There's nothing wrong with dipping out of ketosis and then coming back into it. That's sort of, that's a good thing. Yeah, it is. If it's chronic, it can be very catabolic, and can basically be deleterious to your thyroid, can be deleterious to your health in general. And you can actually see even the guy that actually did the 386-day fasting and lost shitloads of weight, he actually damaged his thyroid and damaged, his endocrine system to some extent, which basically lessened his life in the long run. So it's not a good idea to basically do these crazy things. Our bodies are not designed to be chronically, in a catabolic state. It's best to basically to do it slowly, or to have small bits of rapid period and then basically have refeed periods and then sort of weight stabilize yourself and then go in sort of in these sort of ways, rather than sort of continuous like that. Is not a very healthy thing for your thyroid function and for your general health. And this is where most people, they go for these therapeutic type diets where they restrict a lot of the nutrients, and they're very undernourished. And yes, they do lose a lot of weight. They've got massive ketones. They record these massive ketones, and they sort of go on their Facebook page and they sort of put these massive ketones that they've got and sort of go, ooh, look at my ketones, but they're ignoring all these other issues in their health. When I was doing keto, I never felt cold. A lot of these people feel cold because they're not getting enough protein. More thermogenic, raises your metabolic rate with more protein. So yeah. And the only time I was getting cold is when I cut back on my protein. I noticed that immediately. Put the protein back. Yeah. Yep. Not a problem. It's good to know that the message is getting out there and people are aware of the dangers of phytosterols. Not a good thing. Yep, it is. It bloody well is. Obviously the quality plays a big role. That's a very, very important thing. Okay. Yeah. Look, it can affect, because that increases energy, helps with energy production, but at the same time, if you're not getting enough nutrients in there, it can sort of certain types of like amino can cause some imbalances, so you can throw things out. Yep. As you say, further down, I just noticed. Yep. And thoughts on vegan claims ApoB lipoproteins are trapped by default in the intimum, therefore debunking response to injury, inflammation idea. The evidence to support that? No, they don't have any evidence. It's just basically, they've never proven mechanistically how their theory works. You know, we can basically quite clearly show mechanism that basically when you oxidize, and I've spoken to Bart in the past, and I mentioned about 2 studies back in 83 and 84. They did know before about lipid peroxidation, but they're able to demonstrate mechanistically, that means prove exactly what was happening inside the LDL, and showing quite clearly that basically there was, these oxidative effects happening that were oxidizing, the actual membranes and weakening them and causing these problems. And then you've got sugar molecules that stick, the stickiness, more of them because they've got a positive, ion, so they'll basically stick. They have this stickiness, and the more they glycate, the actual exterior of the pericellular matrix of this exterior, those hairline structures of the LDL, obviously then, and also the ApoB 100, affecting that receptor, because you need to basically recycle through the liver. If you damage that, then basically you've got cholesterol that just will float around. Its resident time will increase, its oxidation will increase, and eventually will end up in your arterial walls, so to blame native LDL is just ridiculous. It's really basically, any due to an inflammation state, you inappropriate stuff, you'll have problems. It's just simple as that. Yep, I can't tolerate. I get very soft, no muscle definition. Look, it depends on every person is different, so what one works with, the old sort of diet that basically the bodybuilders used to do is combine dairy with eggs. So it was basically a sort of a high, I think it was about nearly, can't remember the exact formulation, about 50-50, in terms of eggs and all that. So you had this large amount of bolus of protein in a form where they actually made it into like a sort of a jelly, or something that looked like oats, it was a bit on the thicker side, and they used to consume a lot of this, and that's how they used to get a lot of these aminos in, and cholesterol and all the other sort of stuff that help support the body. So dairy on its own doesn't have sufficient protein, and so and doesn't have enough whey either, because whey is the more anabolic part of dairy. Doesn't have sufficient. It's more casein, which is sort of a slow, much more slower absorbing, which is good as you're doing repair, but it's not basically that it's going to give you that anabolic sort of effect that whey will give you, which is double that of glucose. So it's, you sort of have to look at the formulation. It's on some of my other live streams. You can go back and check them. Okay. Sunbathing has worked. My vitamin D is great. Yep. Best thing for it. Yep. Yeah, because it was a bit low last time when you checked. Yeah, it's just basically people just fear the sun. That's the main thing. If you've got seed oils in your diet, if you don't have enough of the fat-soluble vitamins that regulate the collagen-degrading enzymes to basically protect your skin, which is an actual sunblock and sun protection thing, which is retinol and MK4, yeah, then it's an issue. And as long as you don't have these nasty seed oils incorporated into your tissue, which takes anywhere between 4 to 6 years to basically remove them with a low-dose vitamin E, yeah, so basically as long as you don't have that, you're not going to get burnt, and you can stay in the sun sufficiently to get enough vitamin desynthesis. Perfect. Good to hear. Wish we had more sun down in Tasmania, and I can't get away to Asia this year at all, which is going to be a real bummer. I'm going to be forced to take some supplementation this year, which I normally don't, which is, a bit annoying. But I found vitamin D3 that's basically in, you have to be careful, has to be in extra virgin olive oil, not in the other seed oils. That's just too dangerous. You want it in that sort of source. So there's a couple of brands that only produce it in that, Jared. A couple of the others, Jarrow, and a couple of the others. Yep, think of Jared. Oh yes. Overshot again. Overshot. And yes, trying to clean an oven after being with vegetable oils versus animal fats. Vegetable oils turn to hard plastic. Yeah, it has that sort of plasticky effect. That's true. It's animal fats, they'll solidify, but they have that sort of soft, mushy. That sort of, it's where plant-based stuff can really be. Plus, the sort of shit that they put in there is just horrendous in that regard. Sorry, guys, I just overshot again. Let me find my spot. Okay, found my spot. Yep, he's in Brazil. Said Palo State. I don't think you can cycle out of. It's usually the protein that actually has that effect more than the fat. If you have a whole lot of cream, and you're in ketosis, you'll still remain in ketosis. It's protein that will do it, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. You need to basically be in a state where you're actually rebuilding again. In that regard, not a good state to be in, a constant catabolic state. Very unhealthy. Oh, now is she? Human spends several hours in the sun. Yeah, being deficient is easy. Yep, that's exactly right. It's very easy to be deficient. And I know that because I used to be deficient in the past myself, quite deficient, when I had my health issues. So, yeah, I avoided the sun as well. Can you imagine being 40 degrees south in a cold sort of on an island, which is, next stop is Antarctica. And basically, literally being afraid of the sun and putting sunscreen on, like all the other brainwashed people out there. And yeah, let alone I lost my tan. I used to have a beautiful tan when I was in Greece as a youngster, but, and even now, I get out in the sun, I get a bit of tan, but it's really hard to retain it. The only time I actually build a bit of a tan is when I'm in Asia, in the tropics. So it's a real struggle to keep my tan on in Tasmania. I won't have that problem in the future when I do retire to the tropics. But at this stage, being in Tasmania, it's just too damn south. Yep. Definitely is. Ultimately, What would you in democracy? No, I actually, direct democracy is the only thing that I suggest. All the other stuff is basically suboptimal. Whether you have one political party, whether it's benevolent or not, that controls the whole society, or whether you basically have, a sort of an elite of wealthy businessmen who control a bunch of politicians, like the old aristocrats in the past that overthrew democracy in Athens. There's still basically a small group of people that think that they know best, and the rest of us, are just treated as plebs. When you get citizenry to be responsible and involved, people step up to the mark. You'll be surprised when you give people half a chance. Most of the people that are politicians, what are they? They're average people. A lot of them are professionals, but they're average people at the end of the day. The rich don't, it's very rare, excluding Donald Trump for his own egotistic reasons, but it's very rare that business people directly, and I'm talking about the really powerful business people that have got multiple billions. Donald Trump's wealthy, but it's not, the real elite, so to speak, with a lot of wealth. He's a multi-millionaire or possibly a bit of a billionaire, but he's not, these people that have got, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. So those people basically, they want to be they don't want to be noticed, and they want to be pulling the strings in a Machiavellian way. And that's how they basically operate. So, yeah. And it's just, and the thing is, people say you're free. Well, you try and basically rebel against this regime, or take measures against this regime, or expose this, like Manning or anyone else, expose anything, or, they'll go after you. Julian Assange, they'll put you away. The reality is, even in China, if you're the average person and you're not basically taking on the state will leave you alone, generally speaking. It's no different than in our so-called Western democracies. There's no real freedom anywhere, guys. We're just being deluded by being told that this is what you believe. The only difference is that one society is going to be a bit more heavy-handed in the way it responds to another society, and it depends how developed it is. Even China now, the state there does not go out and roll out the tanks and all that like they used to in the past. Early capitalism was no different. You go back when people didn't even have the vote, they used to roll out the military and slaughter people. The elites are no different anywhere. The reality is that, when you have a more developed and sophisticated society, a more educated society, these educated people they're more integrated into the system. They've got more to lose by rebelling, and at the same time, they are compromised in that regard. And on the other hand, the system sort of, because there's more of them, feels a bit safer, and so it doesn't need to be heavy-handed. It's not that these bastards at the top, go right back to the pharaohs. If they feel threatened, they will use, and it doesn't matter whether it's China, America, or any place. You've seen, they brought out the military in the 60s and literally killed people on the US campuses, university campuses. If they want to use violence and all that, they will use it. We have only had up for 3 million years as hominins, we were truly free. And then in ancient Greece, direct democracy, the citizenry was truly free. But since then, there have been no moments in history where we've been truly free. There is sort of, a veneer of freedom, but that's about it. And it exists in China with different levels of control, less in China, more in certain Western countries, but it's still a veneer. At the end of the day, if you threaten the system, they'll crack the whip, but we've got the propaganda, the media and all that, in all these countries that basically keep on telling you be a good citizen, follow the leaders, do not object, do not rise up, do not basically take them on, do not demand more rights and freedoms, so yeah. Yes, the program never worked on me, let's put it that way. So, I mean, I may not be an anarchist anymore because I believe in more organized things, but, in that regard, not really, mate, not really. I would say sort of a mixed bag. I'm sort of more of a centrist, but in my thinking, I have some conservative ideas and I have some a lot of libertarian ideas, and I have some also left-wing ideas as well. But I don't actually believe in any of these isms. I sort of believe in more what we had, sort of a more, citizenry-based collective type of running of society, maybe it's a bit like the Star Trek thing, where you've got all these machines doing all the work below that are not owned by anyone, but just, by the society as a whole, and are there, but the citizenry is free. There are no elites. There are no party hacks. There are no political parties. There's nobody basically running the show and telling us how to run our lives. We as a group work together as a society, set the boundaries that we operate within and explore space and, and live our lives without basically, so it's a very different society. And that's why I don't basically put myself in one ism or another ism. Ultimately, if there was a movement that emerged in society that basically believed in direct democracy and creating such a society, a world, and people say it's utopian. No. 3 million years of history is not utopia. The only difference between those years and now is that tribal type structure, where you got around the campfire and talked and made decisions amongst ourselves, is no different. It's just technologically, you've got layers and layers of technology that does a lot of the work, which frees up more of your time to be able to sit around the campfire for longer and talk amongst and run things and basically go out and investigate space and do a whole lot of other things. Can you imagine if we directed a lot of our resources away from warfare? And who does warfare, whose interests? It's all these multinationals and all that want to take people's resources away and cause wars and stuff like that. We got rid of all this sort of garbage and basically, had those resources then allocated to meet our requirements and also to basically use them to investigate space and all that. Just think how far we would be as a species and how, the sort of progress we would have achieved by now. We would have literally possibly colonized the entire solar system. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we're caught in this sort of these different elites that basically want to control our lives and tell us how to live our lives rather than, So, yeah, I'm sort of one of those rare people that are sort of, my movement is extremely tiny, and it'll probably take a long time for humans to basically remember the past, remember how we were and how we could be. And it's something that, it's closer to, to that sort of carnivorous approach because that's how we lived. And maybe, hair loss women get their, changing their diet is from losing weight rapidly. Losing weight rapidly can, especially when you're also nutrient deficient when you're doing that rapid weight loss. And I noticed that within those 6 months of doing keto, I had like a month where I cut back my protein to a certain level and my fat to a certain level. And I noticed, I was starting to get cold. I didn't thin out because I got away from it. I got back into doing what I was, and that slowed down my fat loss. But what it did was it didn't affect my, my health more deleteriously. So yes, the other way will definitely, the more catabolic, Yep, more rapidly, but there are consequences. Your hormonal systems are in the toilet. Your basically reproductive capacity goes to zero. All these sort of things get affected. So there's no free lunch in that regard. Bart mentioned going out of ketos when you're having a meal. Yep, especially if there's sufficient protein in it. If there is very little protein in it, you won't. And if you haven't, for instance, I did an experiment where I'd basically gone out, done a lot of exercise, depleted my glycogen stores in my liver, and basically was at that lower level, and then basically hit, like I had a massive steak. My blood glucose went to 3.7 millimoles. What's that? I'm trying to remember. Need to convert. Give me a sec, guys. So just to sort of convert it up. So, oh, look. Is that the one? No, that's not the one. This is the one. I'll just bring it up. Give you a sec. So it basically got down to 66.6, and my ketones were about 3 something, dropped all the way back down to 1. I can't remember whether it was 1.4, 1.3, or 1.5, but they halved dramatically. But I'd already depleted quite a bit of glycogen, and so because I'd already sort of exercised and I'd fasted, and then basically I had a big steak, and so it didn't push me out of ketosis in that regard. But if you're basically time restricted feeding, you haven't fasted, you haven't done shitloads of exercise much earlier. So I'd done earlier exercise in the morning, then in the daytime, through the daytime, things would have normalized to a certain extent. And then, I would have been still in deep ketosis. And then basically I had can't remember what time in the afternoon. And I think it may have been 6 or 7. But anyway, and then I noticed that dramatically my blood sugar had dropped. So that means what would have happened is so that means I was insulin sensitive enough, because usually if your blood glucose basically remains high, it means your insulin, is not working well. So immediately my insulin hit that extra amount of glucose that came from that extra meat and whacked it down to 3.7. But I had enough fat in the system to basically balance out the other thing. It's a bit like the experiment that always have to remind myself to increase the size so people can see it. It's a bit like the experiment that that was done. I can't remember the year. Anyway, the researcher was George Cahill at it's at Harvard. I'm trying to remember the medical school at Harvard. Anyway, and he basically did this experiment to where they fasted people or in a state of ketosis, and then they infused insulin into them to really lower massively to levels where you would pass out and end up in a coma. And obviously there was enough substrate in terms of ketones and fatty acids that basically kept you going. And so in my case, this would have been the same thing, even though insulin was sensitive. that increase that actually happened slightly from that extra protein was corrected, and it reduced my blood sugars to 3.7, which 3.7 is sort of in the range where you're getting into hypoglycemia, but I didn't feel anything because I had enough ketones and enough fat in the system. I was still 1.5 in that regard. So those are the sort of things. It depends where you are. Sometimes people that actually comment about sort of unusual sort of symptomatology. It may be that basically they're not fat adapted. There are maybe a whole lot of issues that can play havoc with the way they sort of the way they go and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of things. No, I'm not into that sort of stuff. Nah, that's for the elites. They want the freedom to be able to do anything they like, while the rest of us basically are told what to do. That's not the sort of anarchy, or that's not sort of. That's why I don't support that sort of what I call authoritarian anarchism, which is anarchism for the rich to be able to do whatever they like, but for the rest of us to basically be kept in our place. There's an absolute difference in that. I'm against the aristocrats, let me put it that way, and all types of rulers who think that they can control my life or want to control my life. Breaking ketosis, breaking catabolism. Yeah, your body swings into the, a ketogenic state is a catabolic state. A vegan state, which is sort of low fat, high carbohydrates, is also a catabolic state. So it may not be a state of ketosis. You're still actually, even in that sort of state, you'd still produce some ketones. Don't get me wrong. But you're not in sort of some deep ketotic state. We're in a very catabolic state for a whole lot of different mechanisms. But, and there will be some information, because I've actually done just a chat with Pim, and I've looked at some of the politics, the food politics, and some of the roots, the real roots of basically these low fat diets and where they've come from and how they work for a limited period of time, how they work, not for long periods of time, for long term, and even how the person who basically promoted or invented this method basically didn't believe in it as a long-term health way of living. It was good for losing weight, but nothing else beyond that. And so when Pim puts that up, that chat that we had, I think people will find that quite interesting, because sometimes we're in our own sort of echo chambers and we miss a lot of this sort of stuff. And even some of our so-called vegetarian opponents, they're not even aware of this stuff. That's just shows how completely and utterly devoid of any scientific knowledge or anything they are. Chicken doesn't seem too full you mean to fill me up enough? Yep. It's different with people. I noticed that women have less complaints about chicken, but also they have lower nutrient requirements. They have more energy requirements in terms of fat. They have less muscle tissue to build and maintain. So there are a whole lot of different reasons. So I would say, which women probably do fine on chicken. Men continuously eating chicken, probably not a good idea in terms of the micronutrient side of the protein. What do you think about OMAD on a carnivore diet? It's fine as long as you're getting enough calories and what you're doing it for. If you're basically doing it for where you're slightly like you're going you're slightly reducing your caloric intake, but not a lot, in order to basically be slightly catabolic to be able to lose weight, then it's not a bad strategy. If as a long-term thing, I'm probably less inclined to be supportive of it. I think that it's probably a better idea to get like 2 meals in there. So that's what I would do anyway. Yep. Yep. Yeah, fatty fish. I'll talk about governments. There's a difference, the sort of right-wing libertarian type government approach and all that. I'm not into that sort of shit. That's just basically for the elites and their government lackeys to basically run things, That's exactly what it is. Corporate feudalism. That's what they want. Go to Africa if you want that. They got libertarianism with a gun. They can do whatever they like, the ones at the top that have all the guns, all the money and everything else. Yeah, that's definitely not what I'm talking about. Hair loss maybe from low stomach acid, not being able to break down the food enough. Yep. Look, a lot of nutrient deficiencies are due to, as I said, most of the stuff starts at the stomach, So basically, yeah, that's where your issues are going to happen, where you're not going to absorb well nutrients and you will suffer for it. And it's been like a lot of people that have done for years and years, in particular vegan and vegetarian diets, very heavy in fiber, where they've caused themselves a lot of issues, all these sort of alkaline diets and stuff like that, and cause themselves uncontrolled, stomach issues or reductions in the sort of their level of acidity over time, and that's just created a lot of problems for them. So, yeah, I sort of agree that most issues, including hair loss, can be attributed sometimes to low stomach acid, not only what you eat in that regard. Yep, I've already put that up. Yep. Oh, look, I have chicken once a week as well. I actually enjoy it, I have to say. I do enjoy chicken. I go and get myself a free-range chicken and to one of the IGA stores, and they get them from Maria Island, which is an island on the east coast of Tasmania. And the farmers there, they've just got they're free ranging, they just range on the pasture and all that, and so they're really the best quality sort of chickens you can get. And I just make sure I get the ones in the pack that have got gluten free, because the gluten free don't have any of the fillers. Because I hate fucking that. You go to either a supermarket or a store, and they've put all that carbohydrate crap inside the middle, inside the middle of the actual chicken to give it flavor and all that. And I go, oh God. So I get the plain chicken that's, and I don't have to carry all that friggin' carbohydrate to dump into my rubbish bin after. And it's always try to clean it out. God, it's always a hassle. So yeah, so I actually prefer getting those. They're really nice chickens. They're a bit leaner than the regular, but that's because they're free range and they're pastured, so you're not going to get these big, artificially sort of monstrosities that, and I usually get at least 2 meals out of them. So I'll literally cut it in half, eat half, and then the other half I'll put in the, once it cools down, I'll put it in the deep fridge and I'll have it next week. So usually I'll buy one every fortnight, and I'll have half 1 week and half the other week as one of my 2 meals a day that I have. So, because I have a midday one and sort of a early evening type, so usually my meals sort of my latest meal is about 5 o'clock, and my sort of earliest meal is around, the 12, 1 o'clock sort of range within there. So that's where I try to keep it within that sort of range. I find it's much better. Just noticed something. Anyway, it seemed like a freeze on this side, but I don't know whether it didn't last long. Yep. I had the hair loss. It's more of a sudden thing. Okay. For 2 months. 2 months. Shit, that's a long time. After I had a 50, okay. Yeah. 50 pound. She had a bunch of hair, but it grew back. Yep. Yeah. And that, look, if you're willing to wear that side of things and say, well, okay, I'm going to do it for a certain amount of time, and if I have some hair loss, so be it. That's a personal choice. It's not probably the healthiest choice, but if as a quick weight loss, it does work. And then what you need to do is make sure you go into a very low carbohydrate state so you don't put any weight back, so you become weight stable. That's what I always say to people. You really have to be careful. You have to measure your intake of calories, and that includes fat. You've got to be very careful not to overconsume, and you really need to get enough protein and enough fat to basically, for satiety and all that, but to basically become weight stable, and then basically try and stick to weight stableness for 1 or 2 years when you've rapidly lost weight. And then it's much easier because you get into a habit. Usually you get into a habit after a couple of months once you do that. And, so there is some psychological, building up certain habits and all that. So you got to be very careful. Okay. More politics amongst my dear friends. Let's try and get a nutritional thing. I don't see many supporters for direct democracy amongst you guys. You're talking about all the existing political parties and political movements and stuff like that. But nothing, And there was, a lot of good thinkers in the 19th century, including Marx. He was a good thinker. His Das Kapital was a really good explanation of how capital works. So, a lot of actually rich people have also read it. Believe me, to get an insight into their own system. There's nothing like asking your opponents to basically discuss your shortfalls. If you want to know somebody's shortfalls, ask their opponent. Don't ask them. They'll never tell you. So you did, yeah. Me trying to beat my sort of my direct democracy thing where everybody's talking about their isms. Oh well, I lost that one, so I gave up. I went back to nutrition. That's easier. That's a comment. Yes, it feels like those stuffed chickens. Yes, it is. It leads to nowhere. Very, very fast. I mean, I've been through different politics, and I had friends from the far left, the far right, and I was even involved in different types of movements as a youngster. So for a period there, I was associated with different sort of groups. I won't go into it. That's my past life. But ultimately, when I look back to my ancestry and I look back, you know, to our original ancestors, the way they lived for 3 million years, or the hominins, you know, they didn't need any of these elites, any of these structures to run their lives, you know. But it's really hard when people have become complacent and sort of accepting of some of these things. You know, when you try to tell them about direct democracy, they look at you in a very strange way. And when you try to explain that also economic democracy, they also look at you in a strange way. You know, it's we've been so brainwashed into these different isms, it's very hard to see our own ultimate interests as a human species, that we can create a better world and project ourselves out into space and really use that extra energy for creativity rather than killing each other. You know, so yeah, me too. Yeah, I have to, because it's really hard. Because I just basically end up hitting my head against the wall, and most people usually say, "Oh, you're being it's an utopia, Harry," and all that sort of stuff. And you can't win. And you go, well, so 3 million years of history has been utopia. The only difference is between one sort of structure and a modern structure. It's just basically really, you know, the technological and cultural edifice is much larger, and that's when basically it becomes, you know, it requires to be more structured. Like direct democracy compared to tribal people living around a group and discussing things, to a direct democracy, the structures were more complex. And in our direct democracy in the future, it would require technology to be used. It'd be much more complex as well, you know, because our society, civilization is more complex, you know. So I'm realistic about those things. But, you know, when you have a more educated population and a more sophisticated society technologically, it makes it more easy, you know. Maybe we're not ready for it yet. Maybe we have to wait at a time when we're more close to a Star Trek type world to achieve that. Maybe that's the case. Maybe I was born too early, you know. Yeah, well, can't do much about it. Okay, there's no silly questions. Maybe a silly question. Can you frequently drink carbonated sparkling water? Decrease or increase pH in the stomach and all that. It's probably, look, when it comes to water, you really need to get hydration from fat, not from water. Water should be there to assist, because it's high in deuterium, like it's 155 parts per million, which is similar to basically sugar. So it's not basically what you want to be hydrating yourself. You should be hydrating yourself. You want to live a long life. You should be like the camels that hydrate themselves with fat, not with water. Well, they hydrate themselves with some water from cactus, but cactuses, because of solar radiation, and it's very depleted in deuterium. So that's probably the you know, I'm sort of, look, I'm not against, I've consumed sparkling water, you know, carbonated type waters and stuff like that in the past and all that. Probably not a good thing while you're eating. I would definitely lock, the alkaline waters are the worst. They've got very high deuterium. They should be avoided like the plague, and also in terms of stomach acid, they just, you know, contraindicate, you know, they're bad. They're just bad. As Bart would say, they're bad. Yes, so yeah, looks a bit here and there isn't going to kill you, but try and keep it to a minimum. Those sort of things. I would, but you know, that's your choice. You have to live with the consequences of your own choices. Trying to make response on the fly often doesn't work out well for both parties during a debate. Yeah, look, it's difficult to argue anything, because you're basically, you know, you're there trying to, it's never an easy thing. So, and my channel's not sort of focused on politics. It's more focused on you know, non-politics side. Yeah, so it's sort of best to sort of avoid those things. Let's get back to some food related sort of stuff. Oh, yeah. It still can have an effect on sort of your the acidity sort of concentration. It's still going to have an effect. It's a bit like if you take apple cider vinegar. Yes, it is acidic, but apple cider vinegar also dilutes the pH. So when you've got a specific pH that the stomach generates, and then you put more fluids in there that have got different pH, these things average out, and that averaging effect changes the pH. It goes up, which means you become less acidic. So, that's what I'm saying. And usually, tribal people wouldn't have had basically a tap to get tap water. They would have water. They would consume water when they were thirsty. Like I know the Samburu people, they'll go out and there's these leaves, these big thick leaves, they're really thick like that have got a lot of water in them, and it's depleted in deuterium, which is good. So it's really low deuterium water. And they will literally they will squeeze it into an ostrich egg, and they will take that to basically consume, to hydrate themselves while they're off on their hunt. Once they get back, they're basically, let alone when they do cure, they usually drink some of the blood and all that, and that's got, electrolytes plus some hydration, which is low in deuterium. And then when they get back, they will have a whole lot of food. And usually they're not having the food with a whole lot of fluids or liquids. I'm not against having a glass of water here or there or that, but I'm talking about massive amounts of fluids and stuff like that a lot of people do. They'll sit there, especially when they go to fast food outlets and they're constantly drinking these sodas and all that. That has a lot of dilution on your stomach acid. That affects how things work. So I tend to basically I'll have my meal, and because it's out of a habit, I just fill my glass to half a glass and just have a bit of just zipping a bit and not a lot, for that reason, because tribal people didn't have a tap close by to literally have a glass of water when they were having their food. So no. It does have a dilution problem. There is that side. Okay, Harry, what do you think of night light on Windows 10? Yeah. Oh, look, I would get blue blocking glasses, and I've made that comment on the previous live stream, and I've linked below on somebody's on comments on a number of occasions about blue blocking glasses you can get. So I think that they're a good idea. I have a pair. You've seen me on occasions when I've done evening streams and all that where I wear them. And I think they're a good idea. And also you can put some software on your laptop to also help lower that level, So, yeah. Oops, nearly overshot. Okay. Miracle happened yesterday. The hubby was diagnosed with prediabetes. I finally got to clear out the garbage out of my cabinet. Okay. So he's sort of come to his senses. He realized that he needs to do something. That's good. Good to hear. Yep. It's sometimes my younger sister's in the same boat with her husband who's got diabetes. And I mean, she does low carb. I mean, she used to be vegetarian, but she resolved all her health problems by going low carb and doing some carnivore now and then. So she's much healthier now. And when her husband was over here last time, we had him on a low carb diet. He did go carnivore. Occasionally he did a bit here and there. And that's when I gave him a whole lot of my leftover strips of glucose strips and stuff like that, because I had them. I wasn't using them anymore because I couldn't be bothered. I knew that pricking your finger every day is an unnecessary thing really to do when you're in ketosis or on carnivore diet. But I had them left over from ages ago when I was in my keto days. And so I just said, well, I've got all these strips. Do you want them? So I gave them to him. So he was using them slightly, and he actually started noticing, how because he forgot he's back in Greece and didn't pack enough, and he basically then noticed how, as he changed his diet, these changes to his blood glucose and all that were dropping because he's, So I said to him, look, he'd gone from about, 10 something, 10, 11 something, right down to about 7, which was quite dramatic for him. That's on metformin, obviously, and metformin isn't a good thing. It causes deficiencies. It's a mitochondrial poison, but there's a lot of things there, and it also inhibits gluconeogenesis. Not only statins affect gluconeogenesis, but a lot of people don't realize metformin does it as well. It inhibits gluconeogenesis. And unfortunately, he has to be on that. But I said to him, look, when you get back, continue what you're doing and get your doctor to make adjustments to your meds until you can get to a stage where you can get off them, because ultimately getting off them, you'll be much healthier for it. So, hopefully this is a wake-up call for your hubby, and he realizes that, he has to make some changes to his life, really important in that regard. Some comments between those two. I got a sore throat. Should I inject disinfectant? Huh? Probably not. If you've got a sore throat, look, I would basically consider something like a chewable zinc tablet, which would be something like that. That's what I would do, or basically gargle some salt water. Those are the things that I would do. I don't think I'd be using any dangerous chemicals in my body. We'll have to have a talk. That'll definitely engage the Randall cycle. That'll definitely make you sick very fast. It's like that young bloke that was, let alone he was eating shitloads of stuff, but he was seed oils, sugar. God, what a diet. Exactly. Maybe he's had enough of life. Yes, well, TV, a lot of people mention all sorts of things on TV. What? That's carb age. Yep. Yes. Having ice cream and shit. Yeah, not good. As I said, that's probably one of my indiscretions now and then, as you guys know. But my ice creams tend to be cleaner. They've got no seed oils in there. They don't have excessive sugars or anything like that. And as a treat now and then, it's not going to kill you. It's not optimal, but it's, still not dangerous, especially when my normal blood sugars are in the, in the 4 level millimoles, which, let's say 4 point last time that I had any strips left. 4.5. And that's 81 in the American version. So my blood sugars are just in the toilet, very low, generally speaking. So it's not an issue having a bit of an indiscretion on a Saturday night, which is mostly now with social distancing and all that. I haven't been getting around to my friends to have barbecues and ice cream in the evening, so I haven't done that for a while. Not that I've really missed it, to be honest, so. And if you didn't leave Bart's stream, you would have learnt what that. Oh, not sure about. That's just a comment to. You're welcome, mate. Oh, look, to be honest, I didn't even hear what he actually said. So you actually have to listen to people's words, exactly what they say and what they mean, whether it's a comical thing or whether it's some sort of other thing. So I can't really comment because I haven't actually heard the words. I've heard third parties talk about it. But he's, it would not surprise me if he said something wacko, because he has done that in the past. And sometimes he says things in a comical way where it's not serious. Whether it's a good thing to do as a leader, especially when there are a lot of people out there with much lower IQs that potentially could take it the wrong way, is maybe not a good idea as a leader to do that, especially when you want to get re-elected and potentially there could be some blowback from the bad media that comes out of that. So I think sometimes he is a bit irresponsible in the way he does things, but that's his personality. It's probably good money. There's plenty of low IQ people out there, unfortunately. Evil salt. Do you have any recommended brands of cod liver oil? There's a couple of companies out of Norway. So I don't recommend, because I know there are other sites that recommend, but I don't recommend any products, generally speaking. I just say to people, and aldehydes is the biggest problem. But everything, if you cook lard at a very high temperature, you will get some aldehydes. But you won't get a lot of aldehydes, very low in terms of aldehydes. Actually, lard is very low. It's lower than tallow. Then you've got butter. Then you've got olive oil, which is much higher. Olive oil is something like double that of butter. From memory, I think it's 2.5 times that of lard. So nothing. You should never really cook, in very high heat, sort of fats. It's a bad thing. But obviously, the vegetable-based, the oils that are basically plant-based oils, even olive oil, will generate massive amounts of aldehydes compared to lard at similar temperatures. So obviously, and then when you're looking at the seed oils that are the commercial sort of stuff, that's just off the show. That is just levels of aldehydes which are just basically astronomical. So you have to be very careful in that regard. So those are sort of important things. But when you're investigating, for instance, and you have to remember, because of the triple bonds in omega-3s, you've got much higher levels of vulnerability to oxidation. So I tend to basically say to people, why are you consuming cod liver oil? In the past, people used to consume cod liver oil, but it was fresh. I mean, I used to go fishing with my dad. I don't do much. I still do a bit of fishing now and then. When my brother-in-law was down here, we did a bit of fishing, but I haven't, I don't do the level of fishing that I did in the past. But when I do go for cod and I catch cod itself, I eat the organ meats, so, and that's how I sort of get these nutrients directly from the cod. There's a nice place down in Dunalley where I go, people that know in Tasmania, where I go and actually fish. Now people know my site. Anyway, slip of the tongue, Freudian slip. Anyway, and there's also a lot of crustaceans around there and, mussels and stuff like that. And it's pretty clean, that environment. And it's sort of, it's like it's got a funnel. It's sort of, the water sort of comes in and out from different parts from the ocean at both ends. And it's sort of much cleaner than many other places because you don't have stagnant water either. So it's a nice location. But that's the way I sort of prefer getting it from real food rather than processed. Cod liver in the past, people used to go and catch it and then they would consume it very early on. The problem is the way things are done now and the way things are stored. I used to do cod liver oil, but I don't really nowadays. And the reason for that is because a lot of these oils tend to be stored in for very long periods of time before they actually get sold. And to get a production run batch that was done very early is not, is really hard compared to the past. Things were just sort of, they went, they got them, they brought them in, they basically processed it, and you pretty much had it a couple of days later because there was no refrigeration, no storage or anything like that. So people got that stuff very early before it became too rancid, too oxidized and all that. The longer these unstable oils, omega-3s or omega-6s, and even to some extent MUFAs, omega-9s, from things like olive oil, the more they remain, the more they will tend to oxidize. So yeah, I tend to not recommend any more. I used to, but I don't. So to people that I did recommend in the early days, I'm sorry, I was wrong. So yeah, and you don't need them, really, honestly. Just best to get those omega-3s from fish. Best to get your retinol from from tallow, from lard, from butter, from ghee, from those sources, and best to get your vitamin D from the sun. So that's the main reason why a lot of people use those things, and that's why nowadays I tend to basically steer people away from processed omega-3s because of all these related oxidative issues and aldehydes and stuff like that. And the problem is that there are some brands that have very low aldehydes, but usually the batches that were given to the researchers to do, those researchers took the batches from those companies, and they were basically very early, But if you go to, let's say, a health store that actually sells these, how long has it been on the shelf for? How long was it stored and all that? Those ones will show much higher aldehydes. And I mean, Bart actually did a bit of an experiment on omega-3 oils from different sources, and they actually showed very high levels of aldehydes and oxidation products. So yeah, I think, not a good idea, guys. Just, stay away from them. Definitely stay away from them. I knew that would give Luke a bit of a laugh. Have you watched Bart's climate videos? What do you think? I have not watched Bart's climate videos. I'll be completely honest. I do share similar views with Bart on that. The hypothesis that actually the guys from Ireland have put forward has not been either proven by a third party or disproven. It's still a hypothesis. It's a pretty good hypothesis, in terms of, the way we see these layers of air and the way traditionally we've characterized them and the way they've actually shown this dynamic nature, and that some of those beliefs that we've traditionally had in the textbooks are wrong, and the models are based on that. So there's an inference there that they're basically, since this evidence is showing that the situation within those those air pockets, those effects, but there's other factors as well that these guys haven't looked at. I've looked at a whole lot of raft of areas. For instance, I've looked at things like the weakening of our magnetosphere. So the magnetosphere of the Earth is weakening. Over the next 800 to 1,000 years, it will do a reversal, a pole reversal. And as it's transitioning in this pole reversal, the level of the strength of the magnetosphere of the Earth is declining. So what you've actually got is more solar radiation coming through, seeping through. Even though we're at a solar minimum, we've still got more solar radiation naturally coming through. And so I pose the question, is this warming that we're getting, could it be that additional solar radiation, even though we're at a solar minimum, you're getting more radiation that's coming through? So let's say, as an example, now that we're in a solar minimum, normally we'd get 10 grams of this. This is just as an example, 10 grams of this, and so we were getting three of those grams were penetrating through, and the rest was going into interstellar space. Okay, so we're only getting 3 of those. That with a reduced magnetosphere, we're probably getting half, an extra half. So we're getting from 3 to 3.5, as an example. So could it be due to that extra energy that's coming in that we're not taking into account of that change in the magnetosphere strength? Because it's not in the models, So that's one thing. The second thing is that the amount of carbon in our atmosphere is very minute. When you look at things like Venus, there the level of carbon is massive, not only in terms of percentages, and I don't like this thing, percentages, but in concentration. It's massive in concentration. So parts per million, it's massive in concentration. And that concentration obviously will increase and it being close to the sun as well. So you're actually taking in more solar radiation, plus you're having, yes, you will get a more pronounced, because it is a greenhouse gas. Then you go to Mars, and Mars has a very thin atmosphere. Because it doesn't have a magnetosphere, slowly solar radiation stripped that atmosphere off. And that stripping off effect that happened thinned out the atmosphere, made it very thin, and to the level that now when we send spaceships, the reason why they fail to land properly is because when they enter the atmosphere, they're going at phenomenal speeds because there's not enough friction to slow them down because the atmosphere is so thin. One thing, you don't have a problem of them being burnt up because there's not enough friction, so you don't need as much protection for the vehicle. But the problem is they're coming at such a speed, the biggest problem is to try and slow down the fuckers, But that thinness, even though the majority of it is carbon dioxide, it's so bloody, the amounts, parts per million, is so little, it's similar to like Earth, which we've got very little in quantity, that the effect is so little that the temperatures are extremely low. They're equivalent to basically our Arctic type environments. So on Earth, it's not carbon dioxide that actually drives temperature. it's basically things, and not even methane, because methane's very little as well. And we've had more ruminant animals in the past where the mega beasts were and all that, and we were in an ice age, and we had massive amounts of explosion of animals on the planet, and we were hunting them and growing and moving out. So, that's just nonsense when you look at that. That argument doesn't hold up. So, what are the key, what are the biggest elements? It's basically clouds and water vapor. They are the most potent, especially water vapor, the most potent greenhouse gases and effects. So there's a couple of hypotheses. A hypothesis basically, another person that basically is a good friend of the Connollys as well, and he's an academic, out of the US. And basically his view is that, you have to double greenhouse, like carbon dioxide each time just to get 1 degree. So to basically where they're talking, like the Vegetards talking, 3 degrees, you would have to basically go from where we are now, like you'd have to get to 1 degree properly, like close to 500 parts per million. Then you would have to double that to 1,000 to get basically 2 degrees, and then double that again to 2,000 parts per million to get to 3 degrees, just on carbon alone. So the amount, you'd have to have multiple industrial revolutions. It's not going to happen. It's just bullshit. There is no argument there. So even though it is a greenhouse gas, water vapor is much more important, has a bigger effect. The problem is our models are limited. We don't have the computer technology, the computer power to basically replicate nature. That means put all these things into a model and replicate nature. Because when we run these models back and we look at the results, they do not actually line up with observation, which means that the models are weak. They're basically statistically piss poor. If you can't basically run the model back and actually replicate what has already passed and what has been recorded history, climate history, you can't replicate that properly without massive dodgy adjustments, then basically it means your model doesn't really work properly. And the model is looking at too little. It's got methane. It doesn't measure cloud cover. It's just basically roughly calculated. Like they have these sort of values in there for this, for that, or whatever, but they don't calculate them because they don't know, they don't have the technology to calculate. To calculate, you can estimate, and all these things are estimations. So they put the estimations in there, and what they can read, they put in there, and they sort of combine that and then sort of adjust and massage the data. That's not really, that's what I call basically trying to fit your hypothesis. That's dodgy science. That's pseudoscience. Science is basically proper observations when you can actually do experimental stuff and say with certainty this. The reality is we don't know how potent, we know from physics that you need to double carbon dioxide each time, but we don't know but that's in a closed system. In a system where it's very small parts per million and diluted, its effect may be even less than that doubling effect. Because we've got no proof, empirical truth, that basically it has any effect. In a closed system, when you're calculating it as a physicist, the physical properties of that sort of gas in a certain concentration, how it would actually behave, that's not taking into consideration anything else. And we know that things in nature, there are complex interactions. And these complex interactions, we don't fully understand them. We don't have, a quantum computer where we can put all this information in with multiple sensors around the planet that can pick up all these variations and changes, that we can put them in and compute them. And we can actually then more closely replicate what's really happening in nature through experimental work. We're not anywhere close to that. We're primitive. We're not at Star Trek technology. So to literally reorganize the entire planet based on a whole lot of very poor evidence is just ludicrous, and the deleterious effects that it can have on people's lives. And to say that carbon dioxide is a threat, there is no threat. Carbon dioxide basically has increased in the past. When we had the Cambrian explosion 500 million years ago, it got up to 7,100 parts per million. That is a massive order of difference. So what 7, now it's about 415, I think it is. But that's about over 17 times. That's thousands of percent difference. Now, it was warmer back then. Was it due to the carbon dioxide? If we look at history, we've seen in periods of time where solar radiation can be different, and you may have both certain gases to be high and solar activity to be high, and yep, you can get, but is it due to one or the other? We haven't teased out a lot of that sort of stuff. Doesn't mean that that it isn't a greenhouse gas. It is. Anybody that tells you it isn't a greenhouse gas is basically talking, garbage. It's just unscientific, completely nonsense. But it's the difference between that and the effect. The effect is a different thing altogether. Its effect? Does it really have, at those sort of parts per million in our atmosphere, a real big effect, or is it basically a non-player? That means it basically everything, it's just statistical, it's noise, background noise, and everything else outweighs it and blankets all over it. And so it's unimportant. These are the things we haven't proven either way. There's a lot of hypotheses out there, but we haven't clearly proven either way. I'm not ready to jettison our whole civilization, our living standards and all that based on such poor evidence. So if I'm proven wrong, so be it. But the thing is, if you're a true empiricist, a true person that believes in observational and experimental evidence, you need to basically say, well, we don't have it at the moment. We've got inferences, which are very poor statistical quality inferences and based on very poor modeling. So, there are still a hypothesis, and it's not something that should dictate policy, since they're still at a hypothesis level and have not been proven empirically and experimentally to the level that you would require to say that there's real truth in what these people are arguing. And so in that regard, no, they haven't proven their case. The Conleys themselves have shown a certain behavior of the atmosphere that literally undermines the current model. But then again, it's a hypothesis. Just because you've got these different layers, the way they behave, that these guys have been able to show, it doesn't mean that these other gases within the atmosphere aren't playing a certain role. That's a different question altogether, one between the other. What they are doing is saying the models don't work because this is what we've observed observationally, and that's not what's in the models. So the models are incorrect with true observation, with true reality, with the way the world, those atmospheres or the gases work within those higher bands, elevations. So it's for the others to basically disprove the Conleys, which they haven't, But it doesn't mean that the Conleys are also completely correct on other assumptions that they've made or other people have made assumptions from what they've actually found, because there could be other dynamic processes that they are not aware of or haven't, because they're only looking at, they're arguing, these people claim that this is happening in those high elevations. We've found this. They're not arguing about a lot of the other stuff. So, there's a lot of hypotheses out there. on a number of these questions. And I think you have to be skeptical. That's what a good empiricist is a skeptical person. You know, now if you're skeptical, you're a crackpot, apparently. You know, empiricist scientists have always been skeptical of their hypotheses. They've always tried to test them to prove them wrong. That is how you progress science, at one funeral at a time, as was said by I forget who, but that was, you know, science progress at one funeral at a time. And that's how it does, because somebody basically looks at your work and says, well, you know, I've done the experimental work and I've found a different result. That means your work is wrong. And that's what somebody puts up on a hypothesis. Now, other people that may disagree with the Conleys, they have to basically do experimental work and prove them wrong on the narrow area that they've looked at. You know, they haven't done that yet. So as far as I'm concerned, that hypothesis still holds. You know, it will only not hold when it's been proven wrong by others. You know, it's the same thing with the theory of relativity, you know, or, you know, the hypothesis that basically there is time dilation. They tested it. You know, they put an atomic clock on the ground, an atomic clock in the plane. They flew the plane around the planet. They landed down at the same station. They compared the different clocks. The one on the plane was had shown less time had passed, proving that the faster the higher, you know, the faster the velocity of a vehicle, or the person inside the vehicle, is compared to the person on the planet, that difference means that time will slow down. As you get closer and closer to the speed of light, time slows down. And so it means that the amount of time that you're on the plane is much, you know, 1 year for you may mean thousands of years or possibly even hundreds of thousands of years for the people on the planet, because, you know, so this is what Einstein said would happen. They did the experiment, they proved it right. Other people did the experiment, they proved it right. And that is what is replicatable experimental truth. That's how it's done in proper science, in true science, not in pseudoscience. Pseudoscience is like what happens in nutrition. That's pseudoscience. More than 95% of all studies can't be replicated. And if they can't be replicated, it means that they're wrong. Because if I can't replicate what you've done and get a similar result statistically, it means basically you're wrong. You know, so this is important to understand how science works and understanding these things. So, you know, that's a long-winded explanation to sort of explain my sort of point on these things. But I think that I'm in a similar camp. While we have, in terms of hypotheses, we have these variations between, you know, my sort of thinking and all that. I'm a bit less certain about a number of factors. Bart's a bit more confident on the Conleys, on everything. I think that they are correct on most of their stuff, especially, you know, the way the atmosphere behaves, but you can't extrapolate from that on a whole lot of other things as well. So I'm still far more skeptical about all the science around the climate sort of stuff, that I haven't been convinced enough in that regard. But definitely I'm on the same bandwagon with Bart, that basically that saying that we're going to all fucking die from too much carbon dioxide is just fucking bollocks. It's crap. There's no science to show that, you know, whatsoever. Zero, you know. There's a lot of, you know, poor statistical modeling and poor statistical inferences from those poor models. But, you know, we're far from basically having really credible, convincing arguments from anyone in this area. And unfortunately, we're making policy on the run based on really poor science, both by even sometimes some of the pronouncements that are made by skeptics that are really, I sort of listen to them and I go, well, where's your science as well? You know, both sides of the argument don't have sufficient science and all that. They've got a lot of inferences, some better than the others, but still there's a lot of question marks on everybody's science in this area. It's just because we don't have the equipment. This is another reason why in science we had a period of reductionism. It wasn't accidental. Reductionism was a consequence of we couldn't actually see the complex interactions of matter in nature. So what we did was we sort of, in a very narrow way, tried to understand things and processes, because that was easier to do. But the problem is some people then made assumptions from those processes and interactions and made a whole lot of theories which were completely nonsense. So we've got to be very skeptical and very careful not to jump really hard and hold on tight on any bandwagon in that regard. So I sort of tend to be closer to the ones who are skeptical about the BS with climate, the climate catastrophe and crap like that. But at the same time, I'm not completely convinced with everything they're saying either. So you could say I'm between them, but closer to the ones like the Conleys, but not completely convinced with all the arguments that all these people are making either. I think the science is still pretty piss poor, to be honest. I know it's a long-winded explanation, but you guys deserve to know exactly where I stand on this issue. And basically you also deserve to know exactly what I base this on, and to explain it to you guys why I base it on that. So that's my position. I know, there's nobody out there that can argue with me on this position, because I can pull their arguments apart, because everybody's argument is piss poor. There's insufficient science. And because there's insufficient science, everybody's really in a hypothesis sort of mode, to be honest. So whose hypothesis will basically reign supreme in the long run? Time will tell. But I don't think it's the current hypothesis that's being promoted by the media and the establishment. I think that they've completely got it wrong. But time will tell whether they got it slightly right, whether there is a slight effect that we didn't, whether and all this about feedback loops and stuff, and they haven't really proved anything of that either. If there is any or stuff like that, there's still more to be proven. So time will tell, as I said. It'll take time. Anyway, back to food. Actually squeezed lemon with salt for sore throat. Yep, that's a good one. That's a sort of a traditional one that people have done. Yeah, and some with vinegar too. You can, I'd be very careful with vinegar with my teeth, and it's the same thing goes also with lemon juice as well. Lemon juice probably less of a problem. Vinegar definitely a problem. I wouldn't be basically gargling vinegar, but you don't really need lemon. I would say the best would be salt, because salt also not only has these antimicrobial, anti-pathogenic type properties to it, but it also increases the pH of the mouth. So it actually lowers it sort of makes the environment less conducive to those bad bacteria that want to create too much acidity and damage to your enamel. So, salt tends to basically do that in the mouth, where in the stomach, it does the complete opposite. It's because, every different parts of the body do interact and behave differently when it comes to salt. So, so keep that in mind. Okay, I was saying, yeah. Oh, yeah, about the corona. Yeah, I think it was related to that. Yeah. But I haven't exactly heard his words, so I'm not going to comment. Is total cholesterol 190 something to worry about? No, I wouldn't worry about on a starch-based diet. Even on a starch-based diet, what else are is that person basically consuming a whole lot of processed shit? If it's basically, if you look at some of the populations in the Pacific, they ate a certain level of starch and a lot of medium chain triglycerides that turned into ketone bodies primarily. In terms of coconut oil, didn't have a lot of problems. So, but if you basically have low trigs, high HDL, yeah, it's you don't have to really worry about LDL at all. It's only a problem when you've got high, and it also it depends on whether if you're doing, let's say, you're in a ketotic sort of or a low carb state, and then you do shitloads of exercise, your free fatty acid levels are going to go up, because basically the liver will detect and say, okay, the energy homeostasis of the body has actually changed. We've got less glucose available, less fat available, so we need more energy because we've burnt a lot of that off because of activities, lifting weights, doing a marathon or whatever. And so basically, it's happening, but while you're doing all these activities as well, it's a dynamic system. So it's looking at energy levels reducing in the body and sort of then supplying these substrates out of the actual liver and exporting fat out of the liver as triglycerides in VLDL, or basically, pushing out, glucose for the brain, for your red blood cells. And then, that's a sort of thing that's, and a bit here and there for certain other processes. And that's the way, glycogen as well. And that's the way the body sort of works. I always say the body knows what it's doing. It's been doing it for millions of years. Let the body do whatever it needs to do. It's a question: am I putting shit in my mouth? Am I glycating those lipids? Am I oxidizing those lipids? Am I damaging those lipids? Am I reducing the negative charge in my body that basically keeps things less sticky? Less negative charge, things become more sticky. Platelet aggregation, all these sort of things happen. That's why I say to people, have a species-appropriate diet, unearth yourself, because you become less sticky and you have a higher level of negative charge, which is really healthy to keep you unsticky. So these are sort of important things in that regard. And it's usually when people are just consuming shitloads of sort of stuff, and they, because of the Randall cycle, they basically can't get any energy in, and all that happens is basically you basically end up building up phosphate. You can't actually properly make those adjustments, and it's only when basically that sort of comes down, and then you can stick that phosphate back and then push those ADPs through and convert them into ATP, and then basically, that single phosphate that actually ends out of that process will basically go for that cycling, that goes back to basically, and as you cycle through ADP, ATP in that way. So, the monophosphate is what basically you need to add back. But, if you've basically just jammed too much energy and you've literally closed off, your GLUT4 receptor will downregulate. It just happens, The only time it won't happen, let's say the cell has a lot of energy. What you may have is basically, you may direct that energy to glycogen. So that the body can do that as well. So it can redirect that energy coming through the receptor, can go to glycogen, not right through to pyruvate. So, so it depends, your physical activity, what you're doing and all that, how energy is produced. It's complicated in that regard. But, you know, with the right nutrition, the right food, it all works well. You know, let's look. You can do a little mixture and then just drop with, you mean copper. Probably you mean copper. Dropper. I suspect it's copper. Yeah, you could, you could get drops of copper, and basically, you know, that's a, you know, usually nothing, you know, copper really with pathogens really knocks them for 6. But be very careful, and, you know, small little bits in water, dilute them. Nothing crazy. Please don't do anything crazy. Do not put your life at risk. No. I don't really watch a lot of TVs. You know, some of the, I'm a bit of a traditionalist with the old sci-fi and all that, but you know, probably boring to be around in terms of that. A lot of documentaries, and, you know, I mean, I've heard of Westworld. Don't get me wrong, a mate of mine swears by it and all that, but I haven't, you know, watched it. You know, at some stage I may do that. But at this stage, it's just having the amount of time, you know, just not enough time. You know, I'm pretty much more into sci-fi, I have to say, than anything else. Yeah, and a lot of documentaries and some action movies and sci-fi action movies and stuff like that. You know, occasionally I'll watch the odd romantic thing or comedy. I do like comedies as well. Bit of a laugh. Comedies are good, you know, good for your health as well. So don't neglect that side of your life either. Need a balance between comedy and action and stuff like that. So it's comedy's a good distressor for most people, especially in these hard times. Probably better to watch more comedy stuff than basically, I know some politicians are a bit comical, but it's best to watch some real good comical that doesn't make you angry or whatever, and you know, and upsets you. Anyway, would you say we need to consume more protein than what is structurally needed for optimal health? No, I don't believe in, you know, massive amounts, like that guy that was just eating shitloads than more than his requirements. I've always said, you know, 1-to-1 for men. So one gram of fat for 1 gram of, and keep it within closer to your caloric requirements. That's what you need to do, you know. So, and based on your activity level and all that, you sort of basically have to work at your base level for your size. There's a lot of popular calculators online, so you basically look at these sort of things and say, okay, these are the sort of, for maintenance of weight, I need these amount of calories, and you roughly can estimate that on the food that you're eating on a regular basis and work out that. And that's all I've done. You know, and I usually have certain standard foods that I eat every day, and I add a few things here and there that I know that have a certain density. So I don't have to measure them because I've already done that in the past, and I know exactly the proportions to mix and match in that regard. So if I need to go, you know, I've had so many today, and I can do that sort of adjustment. But you know, try and keep it to, you know, a reasonable level. Women need more fat because they've got more fat stores. Remember the ape one that I did, the chimp one that I did with Bart, how the chimps had very little, the males, extremely little fat stores. The women had more, because women basically, for their own hormonal requirements, reproduction, they go through all these hormonal fluctuations. They need more fat to regulate all that sort of stuff. So I usually say to women, 1.2 to 0.8 in terms of protein. They've got less muscle mass. They don't need as much muscles to consume. So it's all sort of nuanced in that regard. So basically, what would that be? For men, it would be about 35% of your calories coming from protein, the rest fat primarily. And then for women, it's about 20 to 25, and the rest coming from and it depends on what your needs are at what point in time in your life and all sorts of things, and you play around with that and see whether you need a bit more protein. Some women are a bit more muscular. They do a lot of exercise and stuff like that. And they need a bit of more protein, but they never a woman, whether she does weightlifting or all this, is never going to grow massive big muscles like a lot of the men. Not going to happen. Even with steroids, it's not going to happen. So there's very few cases. Yeah, there's always outliers. Don't tell me about outliers. I'm talking about the general average woman, the general average man. That's what we're talking about here. So very important to keep that in mind. So yeah, it's not complicated, guys. It's just not complicated. Everybody else tries to make it complicated in that regard. But yes, doesn't mean you have to, compared to your girlfriend, mate, you need a bit more protein. She needs a bit more fat. Simple as that. So my mum's cholesterol is about. Look, unimportant, remember. So, unfortunately, she does the wrong sort of diet. If it's a high carb, low fat diet, it's not the most optimal for her health. It's it'll mean that she'll suffer more sarcopenia in the long run. You have to remind her that after 65, your levels of taurine synthesis drop dramatically. That means basically that's an amino transporter. So after 65, you need more protein than somebody who's younger, because you can't actually transport sufficient. You need to push more in to get more in. It's the unfortunate reality. This is why a lot of older people end up with sarcopenia. What do you think I supplement with? Because it actually starts happening at 40, then it increases after 50, and why I supplement with taurine. It's not accidental. I want to maintain my muscles that I've still got from earlier. Actually, they've increased in size compared to what they used to be. So, that's important. And your mum needs to understand that it's really important that she basically ups her protein. People are at that age, because you're basically, if you're on the appropriate diet, you'll be recycling more nutrients in that regard. You need to be on a proper diet, but it's very hard with people of that age bracket. It took my father a long time to basically jettison a lot of the legumes and stuff like that, and a couple of other items. More some of the nightshades as well. Even though he's got a bad knee, it's a struggle. And it's just recently that he made some changes, and notice his knee got better. He increased his protein and made a few changes that he noticed his knee was, he's 85. His knee started getting better, less painful. And I said, well, Dad, aren't you convinced now? And he said, okay, I'm going to get rid of all the nightshades out of my diet. So it takes time sometimes. They have to try things, talk to them multiple times, in not an aggressive way, in a very, just give them the information and let them literally think about it. And eventually, if they really want to help, they'll come back and say, look, this I've tried, and they'll try it themselves. They won't tell you. They'll do it secretly, and then they'll own it. They'll come say, oh yeah, that was I've done this and it's really working for me. You go, didn't I tell you that? But you don't say that. You just let them own it, because then they feel happy. Yeah. Yeah, then they're more likely to listen to you on more issues. So oops, I lost my spot. Oh, I hate this. Okay, let me try and find my spot again. Sorry about this, guys. Can be annoying when it overshoots. Why can't I find that comment? Oh, God almighty. This can be aggravating. Okay, I will have to just, sorry about this. I'll just have to pop into another area, and and it just means that if you don't see your question, just ask me again. It's just one of those aggravating things that's popped up. It's hate speech. If you don't agree with me, g'day, Bart. It's good to see the bigots around. General chat on open Discord. Hope they're saying nice things about me. There's another image there. Oh, I need to bring it up. Let me get a sec. Okay. Let me bring that up. I love it. I love it. Oh, thanks, guys. You made me laugh again, Luke. Thanks, Necro, Kitty. Appreciate it. That is good. That is good. I need that. I need that humour for the day. Yes, yes. Nice one. Appreciate it. I look forward to these all the time. I sort of love them. I don't have Jarrett today with me here because he's probably something's come up with his life. Because he usually spots these and calls them out to me. So because I'm looking at the damn thing and it's so far down, and I sort of miss those sort of things, and like I missed the milk one last week, and so but luckily Luke sort of made it available for me. Yeah, it was good. It's radical. It's not enough of them. Thank God for that. I suspect that's the climate models that we're talking about, or something like that. Yes, yes. I mean, less than completely proven hypotheses. I'm not about to jettison my life based on poor science. Oh, look, sometimes, the majority nowadays of a lot of science consensus is based on very poor science, especially nutrition and in climate science as well. Very poor. And that's the biggest problem. Here he is. Good to see you, mate.
Oh, man, you were quick on the draw there.
I just saw you, one of the eyes. Oh, there he is.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Harry.
Yeah, how are you, mate? It's good to see you.
Not too bad. Yeah, thanks. Good to see you too.
You've got your meat. You've got your milk.
I do have my milk.
Good to see. Good to see.
Would never be caught without it.
Did you see the new one? Or you haven't seen the new one yet?
The new one.
Oh, mate.
Oh, did Luke's latest work?
Necro, actually, Necro Kitties. She's actually
Okay, so what am I looking at here?
that's the actual the milk. The protecting the cream is a legitimate use of lethal force. It was basically a comment earlier that basically, if I take milk to work and all that, because it's about 50 people, cream and all that, or, specific sort of stuff that's, better quality than some of the stuff that's provided, there are people that will end up using some of it, and, legitimate take lethal force against them. It'll be a while before I have an opportunity to do that. I'm working from home currently. But yes, it's pretty funny. It's a good one.
So that was by NecroKitty?
And this is the other one, the milk one you probably haven't seen. This is from last week. And
I did see that one on Bart's Discord.
Oh, you've actually seen that. Okay.
Yeah, that was good.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's pretty good as well. So yes, it's been a bundle of laughs in that regard.
Accurately summarizes my feelings about milk.
Try to remind people of the importance of good nutrition. Yes, it's good to see all that sort of stuff. Now I have to be very careful that the moment I jump onto another spot.
Okay, I'm just positioning my windows here so I can see everything. There we go.
Yep. So Luke's I'm a body weight training obsessed boy also. Rings, bars on the ground, also some regular look good. What you build now, you will have in the future. And also you will increase those myonuclei. And to the level that you increase those will be based on genetics. Sorry, but that's the reality. You're basically, if your genetics can inhibit myostatin or not is really up to it. Obviously, that plays a big role, whether you can actually build more muscle or not, ultimately. And that's where the difference lies between people. There is a lot of genetics of that. Even with calves, some people have got them, some people don't. It's just, and some people don't have to do much exercise to maintain good calves, and others literally have to. That's all they focus on, literally for half the week. So yeah, it's the reality. We're not all blessed with great calves like mine. Yeah, we're all getting old and having dodgy shoulders and all sorts of things. Tell me about it. I injured myself. This sort of it's not too bad today, but I actually ended up having to see a doctor, and I'd actually injured my from lifting weights and sort of doing a few stupid things, overexerting and stuff like that, and I ended up really where I got a lot of sort of pain, like sharp pain and all that, and I actually was finding it hard to sleep because I said this week I didn't get much sleep, and I ended up staying late at night watching some shows to try and exhaust myself, in order to be able to sleep because I had, that discomfort. So, but today it's not too bad. Today my sort of shoulder feels much better, and getting bloody old.
You just need to do another fast.
Yeah, probably to do a bit of repair, get rid of. I do have some proteolytic enzymes, but I was going to keep them for later on. But I have started using them because they have a tendency also going in and clearing out these enzymes. You add more enzymes. It's the other thing, as you get older, your body transcripts far less proteolytic enzymes, less basically things. All these, taurine comes down every, for pulling in more, for transporting, for transporting basically aminos. Also, the other thing that most people don't know about taurine, and a lot of this sort of stuff I I learnt years ago when I was, with my cardiovascular disease, I just had to look into all these subjects. You put taurine in PubMed, you get all these sort of entries with all sorts of different things that it can do. But another thing for now for the virus that we're talking about, which is more topical, is that it also has an inhibitory effect, on basically on the amount of cytokines that can actually increase in your system. It may be another reason why older people who are also on a lower protein diet that have less taurine in their diet generally, that tend to basically, because it's only high in animal foods, like beef, lamb, these sort of things. And so that could be another issue why these people are more vulnerable to cytokine storms as well. It's because there is a regulatory side with vitamin D3 that I've mentioned before. So, yeah. Now, next one down. Let me try and find a... Yeah, it's a problem for everyone, being able to access good equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've been shamefully neglecting my exercise as much as I'd like to since the gyms have closed.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have.
Having a dedicated space helps with the discipline.
Okay, let me... Still trying to find something. My throat is becoming really dried out. I'm having one of those moments.
Sore throat. That's a symptom of something. I hear there might be something going around. Dry cough.
I did
Do you have a headache?
Oh, don't tell me that.
Because I did call 911.
I did go to the hospital.
What's that?
I did go to the hospital for my shoulder and all that. Ended up, so...
No, I'm sorry.
Please not.
I'm sure you're fine.
I think so. I just haven't, had much water today, and sort of my throat's a bit niggly in that regard. Anyway. More politics amongst these boys. Okay. Your mum, that is. Yeah, look, it is sad that she doesn't listen, but it's that generation. It's really hard. Damn.
Yeah, my mom took a spill this week on her stairs at home. Just sprained some ligaments, and
is she doing okay now?
She's doing okay. She has a soft cast on for a couple of weeks, but she sure eats lots of sugar and doesn't bother to try to exercise to maintain any kind of strength in those small stabilizing muscles or anything like that. So
yeah, but doesn't help.
You're right that older generation is stubborn.
Yeah, it's always damn hard, so what can you do? Okay. So tired. Keep dozing off. Can be a bit like that. As I said, I haven't been getting some good sleep this week, so I'm sort of struggling today as well. I'm struggling to get out of bed in the morning as well. So I missed Pim's sort of morning chat, and then basically after that, a few other things, which was unfortunately just remind people to like and subscribe. Back to the comments, and also share if you can. That'd be nice.
Close the window so you can't hear the traffic. Processed sugar is a nutrient. Yeah, I guess it depends who you ask.
Oh well, it's not it's definitely not a healthy nutrient. It's an energy source, but it's not the healthiest one. Oops. Plastic bear. I think that's in regards to blue light, or maybe the coffee as well. Yes. Oops. Harry, you mentioned what is the best time to eat meals? Midday. Yep. The deuterium content. Deuterium content is a completely different issue. But in terms of meal timing, I would say you're basically at about 10:30 to 11 is the lowest point in your cortisol level. So spikes in the morning, raises your blood sugar slightly, and then basically comes down. And it's usually at the lowest at about 10:30 to 11, around about that time. Can vary from season to season, because there is a bit of there's a bit of a shift in the light as well. What time does the sun rise in the morning and stuff like that? So that's why I usually say 10:30 to 11. Like in winter, it's more closer to 11. In summer, it's more closer to sort of 10. But it's neither here or there. So basically focus on eating in sunlight, in daytime, up until about 6, 7 o'clock at most. Because usually your melatonin starts rising at that time, and at the same time, your whole digestive system starts shutting down. Because you have to think about it. Go back ancestrally, people around they went for a hunt, they brought back they got their kill, they consumed a bit while they had their kill in midday. Same thing with gathering. Women would have consumed some of the stuff. They bring it back to the tribal camp. They feast on it in the mid-afternoon to the early before the evening. There may be a bit here or there left over. They're in the campfire, around the campfire. Sun's going down. There's those near-infrared frequencies, and they are having a direct effect via the melanopsin to set that circadian sort of effect, and your melatonin production goes up, getting you ready for sleep. So let me just get a bit more water. Sorry about this, guys. I just need a bit more. My throat is really dry today. I don't know why.
Right, it's my weekly 60 seconds alone with the chat. Quickly, we talk about all of the important things while Harry's gone. I just finished an 88-hour fast today, and I'm a lot more tired than I would normally be at this time of night, so I don't feel as talkative as I'd like.
Yeah, it probably doesn't help that I was basically talking to a mate of mine earlier for quite some time, and then while I was listening to Bart's.
Oh, you didn't save your voice. You're supposed to have responsibilities.
Yeah, I know. And then on top of that, it's nearly 2.5 hours into it. And I mean, I've done longer. Like I did once 3 hours on Bart's and then 3 hours on mine. It was like 6 hours. Oh, no. I don't know how it held out that day. But today I'm just really struggling at the 2.5 hour mark.
Yeah, I was just saying to the chat that while you were gone that I just finished an 88-hour fast today, so I'm not quite as talkative because I'm tired right now. Not as talkative as I'd like to be anyway.
Yes. So I tend to I have a tendency, probably because of my being a premature child, that compared to other people's sort of like pathway, it's much narrower, to some extent. My head, it sort of didn't grow as far out. I don't have a very pronounced chin like some other people have. So there's a few things anatomically there, because just the way it goes. It's what you're born with. You can't help yourself in that regard. And I tend to choke much easier. Also on my mother's side, they tend to have that sort of anatomy a bit. My auntie, her older sister, actually died from choking. So
I think you mentioned that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I much easier. I can really choke very easy. I sort of know when it's coming on, and I try to mitigate it so it doesn't become an issue. But sometimes, it just escapes me. I forget about it, and yes, and then obviously I get those coughs, and so I've got that side of things. And plus, when you're talking quite a lot of hours, and you haven't hydrated enough, you tend to get very dry throat, which doesn't help either. So, because I got up late, I sort of looked at, and then after that, I jumped on the Bart's, putting a few comments. I forgot about any hydration this morning. And then, and you'd lose a lot of hydration at night as you're sleeping as well. So there's a lot of things that I forgot to do today. Shit happens. Seems that extra water has helped a bit. Okay, so we'll move on. Get a few more questions in. Okay, blood sugar was 6. Shit. That's bad. It is very high. Very high. Okay. Notice there was more and more NAD plus supplements coming on the market. It seems to be a growing section, for redox potential. But the problem is with a lot of them, there are issues where, as I said, I use niacin, nicotinic acid. They tend to work much better. NAD, the NMN, and some of the others, they seem to basically be less stable in the stomach, coming through in the stomach. And so there's an issue of how well they work, so because you're basically from NADH to NAD plus, you're passing on an electron, within the normal redox of the actual cell itself. Of the mitochondria itself. So, it does decline with age, and certain types of frequencies in the environment seem to deplete more of it, especially the blue light type frequencies. But at the same time, whether these supplements are the best idea, I'm not convinced. I know that nicotinic acid, the thing that gives you those flushes, which I get a pharmaceutical grade from an actual pharmacist. They only give it to you if you've got usually sometimes they're a bit cagey, especially in Australia. They won't give it to you over the counter very easily. You sort of have to say, I've got an underlying existing condition, I need it, because I'm not on statins, and they'll give it to you under those circumstances. And in one case, they wouldn't give it to me, and I had to get there are cases where you may need a medical or a reference from a doctor, in Australia. It depends. Online, you can get them very easily, nicotinic acid, but that sort of stuff. So I just told her, look, if you want to contact my doctor, that's how I did it. I said, I won't mention his name because, for privacy purposes, he's blah, blah, blah. Can you please, can you contact him if you've got an issue? And she said, oh, okay. And so she gave it to me in that regard. Now they know me. It's not an issue. I turn up, I say, can I get some niacin, some nicotinic acid? Not a problem. They give it to me. You have to have it with food because you will get hot flushes. You know that it's very bioavailable, because it's exactly similar to the natural form that comes from those animal foods and all that, and it'll just rush through the whole of you. It'll literally go everywhere in your body, and you've got it. But it's really good for your skin. It's really good for your body generally. In that regard, and it also increases the redox potential of your body, which means your body's ability to repair itself, do a lot of things and all that. So yes, it is helpful. As with age, our NAD plus levels decline, and but it also depends on your diet. You can actually improve your redox potential or your NAD sort of levels if you exercise, you fast. All these things have a positive effect. You don't necessarily have to take supplements. I would say fasting and exercise has even a more pronounced effect than some of these supplements. So don't waste your money in that regard. And if you really want to actually increase it slightly, then you really have to look at, something like nicotinic acid, nicotinamide type things, or something which is in a liposomal form that can get past the gut, the sort of stomach gut sort of issue, where things can be degraded, and you can lose sort of, what you need to basically get any NAD plus boost in your body. And most of the experiments that I've done on rats, where they live longer with more NAD, are all based on megadoses compared to humans. So, yeah, it's not going to happen, guys. So you're deluding yourselves if you think. I know, look, it's like all supplements. If you expect to basically get health out of a supplement, it's not going to happen. It's what you don't put in your body, sugar, trans fats, these things. Expose yourself to too much EMF. Don't ground yourself enough. Don't do all the things. Don't sleep well, like I did this week. So really looking after that redox potential, aren't I? It's those sort of things that make a big difference. If you think that a supplement will cover you for too many indiscretions and lack of sleep, not going to happen, guys.
Yeah, I was thinking about ordering one of the anklets that you plug into the wall, to be able to be grounded at night in my apartment.
Yeah, look, it's good if there's a lot of different options. There are you can get shoes to allow you to ground as well, with a sort of like a copper plate or whatever it is. You can basically get yourself like a copper wire and a grounding rod outside, and literally wrap it. I think that's what Bart does. He wraps it around his toe or something like that in the evening. You can buy yourself like a blanket or something to lie on, which is
grounding mats.
A grounding mat. That's it.
Yeah.
The only problem with grounding mats is there is dirty electricity, and that can actually change the sort of, the sort of frequencies, or the not work as well. So there are a couple of issues in that. So what I usually say to people is, if you've got a grounding mat, buy yourself a UPS, which is an uninterrupted power supply unit, UPS. So what you do is you plug the UPS into the power socket, and the mat into the UPS, which will basically give you stable, electricity without any of these sort of irregular type of fluctuations that you would get from poor electrical wiring in the house, or the stuff that's coming in, those sort of effects. So that's another option. So if you go for that, if you're going to, they are quite expensive, those mats. If you're going to go for something like that, then plug it into something which is going to properly regulate that, So UPS with the actual mat.
Mm. Do you think a UPS would be necessary with one of the anklets?
What's that?
Do you think a UPS would be necessary with one of the, just like the bands that you wrap around your ankle? It's, I mean, they're meant to plug into the wall still, so I'm just curious.
It's hard it's really hard how you would sort of, I mean, still in terms of the UPS, I'm not sure about how well they ground between, and I wouldn't actually want to recommend it to somebody.
Right.
In terms of, you don't want them to be electrocuted.
Yeah, of course.
So and that's why when it comes to those sort of things where a UPS just basically is providing power to a system no different than a power outlet, less of a problem there, but in order to basically, and so you would have to basically make sure that the UPS basically provides grounding. That means that it's properly designed. So there are different types. There are stuff that they use in in computer sort of outlets, or like in data centers and stuff like that, big data centers. So really important to know what you're getting and what you're using, whether it's compatible and all that. That's why I don't recommend any of this sort of stuff, because unless I've done the research on it, I don't want to get, accidentally put somebody at risk.
Mm.
And that's why I usually say, well, the easiest way is just, if you're at ground level, it's really easy just to poke something into the ground, run a really thin copper wire through, and, have it around your toe and all that, some sort of like some sort of band around your hand or whatever.
Yeah, I think Bart puts it around his ankle with a sock over it.
I think he does something like that. That's right. Yeah. So that approach. And actually, it's actually the best thing. If you think about it, the time that you actually ground yourself the most is in the evening. If you're a tribal person, you would be walking upright for most of the day. So you basically only your feet are basically earthing. You're still getting, but when you're actually at night, you're actually even getting more. And the other thing is, because the Earth is not getting bombarded with solar radiation, and it has to do with the effect on the magnetosphere, you actually increase the charge at night. So it's actually really important that people used to lie down and actually actually at night as you're healing, it's actually the best time to actually get more of that charge.
Right.
So and that's again a circadian sort of hack, or matching that circadian sort of that being in sync with the planet, basically. Now, Harry, what's your stance on seafood? Is it safe to eat, and what kind? I love seafood. I think it's great to have seafood. Now, there are a couple of issues with seafood. Crustaceans. There are risks with crustaceans because they could be polluted or exposed to pollutants, or to microplastics, to pollutants from runoff. And it depends on where so you really need to know your source, where you're getting these, the seafood. Most of my seafood comes from the Southern Ocean, which basically means between Australia, Argentina, and New Zealand, all through, and South Africa, and everything to the south of that, right down to Antarctica. So all my food sources are coming from that part of the world, whether they're local or they're picked up from boats that have picked up from those oceans, and they're snap frozen. So those are my sources. And then I've got sort of local sources, which is probably about, what is it? Dunelli's about 45 minutes away, depending on what speed you're going to. And that's a nice area where I've done fishing, cod fishing in the past, but also around that waterway, that area, close, to the coast, you'll find a lot of things like mussels and a lot of other types of crustaceans that you can actually pick. And the area there the water quality is really good. So,
right.
Those things, and there's not and also because a lot of that is also crown land, or beaches and crown land and stuff like that, or public reserves. There's no agriculture nearby for runoff. Mm-hmm. So it is really clean waterways because whenever you have a bit of agriculture, I'm a bit dubious about it.
Yeah, the thing with seafood for sure is it needs to be sourced well, and for like crustaceans and bivalves, it's important that they come out of healthy water. They can be affected by algae and heavy metals and any kind of runoff from agriculture, as you say. And
algae is another thing.
And a lot of seafood is deceptively marketed as well. That they try to make it sound like it's wild caught, use words that sound like that try to, you might actually be buying farm salmon if you're not positive of what kind of seafood you're buying in a supermarket, for example. So hopefully get it directly from the coast if you can, directly from a fishmonger, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I used to go down to the waterfront here in Hobart, and we'll get it off the boats that have come in, stuff like that. So, it's pretty much, caught that day, or basically there were, like oyster farms, and they've brought it in on that day from clean waterways and stuff like that. And we've got maps you can actually go on. We've got a thing called List Map, which is a local Tasmanian government mapping website, and you can actually see where these sort of areas are and stuff like that. So you know where things are located in terms of which primary industry basically maps these areas. Where their fisheries area sort of looks at this sort of stuff. So when you look at that, that's available to any Tasmanian. That information, it's open data, so they can actually look at it, and it's basically very helpful to find out where these things are coming from. So that makes it easy to determine source as well, and what waterways, and how the quality of the water in those waterways, because I've got environmental information as well which is really helpful. A lot of countries don't. At least here we've got that sort of information. We've got landslip information. We've got all sorts of things, data, agricultural data for farmers and stuff like that. There's all these different ways they can check the acidity of the land and sort of determine where they should, plant certain types of crops or whatever. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff, which is quite helpful. But people need to really, me going on a tangent, people really need to know their source. So so that's one issue. The other issue is up the food chain in terms of mercury and and certain heavy metals and stuff like that. But also it depends also very critical in terms of cadmium and cadmium and sort of mercury. It depends on selenium levels in the fish. So some fish have very low selenium levels, like what do they call the swordfish? So they tend to have more mercury, less selenium, because selenium basically can deal with the mercury, can deal with some of these heavy metals. So it's really important. And I've been, for other reasons, I used to supplement selenium, but I've basically, nowadays I get enough from my diet that I don't need to. It was based on studies back in 2000. We're talking about 14 years now, 2006. I'd seen studies. This was before even, based on, there were studies of one out of Poland, which showed that 250 micrograms of selenium actually reduces cancer rates by 46%, and their soils are poor in selenium. So they were looking at some of the reasons that were driving this, but also it's good for detoxification in that regard. So it's called, basically converts to a thing called selenide, which basically is the thing that actually will chelate these things and take them out of the system. So that regard, I think, like a lot of people think, yellowfin tuna, it's got a lot of mercury. Well, it's got shitloads of selenium in it as well. So basically, not an issue. I consume yellowfin tuna and I don't worry about it in that regard, because it's got plenty of selenium to deal with the mercury. But there are other fish, like I said, swordfish, that don't. So give those a miss. I'll have to do something on different seafoods and what their selenium levels are compared to. So that'll be another one in the list to do. I'll try and get it done at some stage. Those little things, because those little things are more easy to do. I can do them quite quick. It's like the milk ones that I did in a couple of others. It's when you're doing the more complicated ones that need more time to set up and prepare. When you've got a day job, it makes it a bit difficult. So I will try and get one of these seafood in terms of selenium content in different fish, seafood, and how you can mitigate some of these issues. So for future time. So don't worry about tuna, but do worry about swordfish. Do not touch that stuff.
I think I've probably got another 15 minutes in me or so.
Okay, so I nearly lost. Yeah, look, I'm not going to be that far away either. Okay, so Luke's got there's a couple of more there. I have to look at the other. I have to look at the other one over here. Oops. They're so creative, these young people.
Spock Harry, he says.
Oops.
Looks good.
Oops. Bit of
wise, pragmatic. Logical.
Live long and prosper.
Yes.
I can do it. Nice one. And the other one was, where do you work out? On the Harry Serpanos YouTube channel. Love it. Love it. Perfect. Mate, you've outdone yourself again. You've outdone yourself.
He said he's tired, and Necro already did an edit, so.
Yeah, she did one. The one that we showed earlier. So, in that regard, I always save these. Anyway, back to the fun. What's this? 2 months, 25. Congrats, you damn stuff, poisons. Bit off. Not sure about all that. Bit confused. Okay, actually a question. Harry, I may go today. Ah, okay. You need to sleep. That's okay, mate. Yeah. Good night. Enjoy your sleep. I need to try and get some sleep tonight, definitely. Especially I've got work tomorrow. So definitely need to get into bed earlier.
You say you're working from home at the moment, though?
Yeah, I am. It feels a bit strange. The funny thing is when I was basically like at work, when I was in the middle of doing things and all that, I didn't want to be interrupted by too many people, when I got and all that. But nowadays, I look forward to the interruptions because I see no one, and it's and I'm pretty much very much a sociable person, and so when I don't have an opportunity to actually chat with anyone, it drives me up the wall. It's sort of so, and it's so it's a bit strange. It feels a bit weird. It's still, even though I've been doing it now for about a month, it still feels a bit weird. So yeah, they're setting up better systems now to be able to, so I can do certain other tasks that I traditionally do, which will be good. Because I can't do some of the traditional map stuff. I can't do it. I can't do any of some of the coding because they can't get a license. But they are setting up a VPN type thing, and that may change things in that regard. Jared, I have of those grounding wristbands when I'm sitting here at the desk. Yeah, look.
Grounding sheet to sleep on. That's interesting.
Yeah, I haven't heard of a sheet. I've heard of a mat. But look, they're coming up with all sorts of things.
Yeah, my apartment's 2 stories, and it's not really practical for me to run a copper wire out my window, so I'm interested in what I can do to just plug into the wall.
I was about to laugh with this one. Did it have a wire in it?
Looks like a few people are saying goodnight.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's getting a bit late for everyone.
Yeah, I would like to be able to just do that, but I would need to get some copper.
That's right, and that's directly outside, rather than going through the electrical wiring of the house. It's it's safer. It's safer, cleaner in that regard. So, yep, I agree. I think that's a much better way of actually going about it. What's this? Did you know the Ziz would be king of Australia if he was still alive? Who knows? Who knows? Sometimes you're more popular when you're dead rather than alive. It's just the way it is sometimes. So
I know you definitely become more virtuous as soon as you die.
Oh, definitely virtuous. That's true. See you, Shell. Good to see you here. And have you heard of the hypothesis that glycolysis is more complex, that it needs to be because of its role in deuterium depletion? In terms of deuterium depletion, yes. In terms of basically just energy production, no. When you basically go through pulling something through GLUT4 right through to pyruvate, it's not a very complicated sort of process. But the depletion side, that's a separate thing altogether. That has to do with the mitochondria. And, it depends on what substrate it's using. if you're using glucose from your own body, from glycerol, fat or glycerol from fat has less deuterium in it. Not all, sugars. All sugars have different deuterium. If it's endogenous, it's got lower than exogenous. So, in that regard, completely different thing. And whether that has an effect on the mitochondrial health in the brain, that if it's coming from your own body, it's less reactive and less damaging to your mitochondria because there's less, the nanomotors in your mitochondria in your brain, because they're separate actually from the neurons, the actual mitochondria type, the energy production part. So whether, that has an effect, possibly. I think deuterium, too much is damaging to the mitochondria in the long run. But there's a lot of, but basically glycolysis itself is not very not as complex, but the other sort of ramifications of depleting deuterium, getting the neutron load down, because at the end of the day, you're generating water, and that's where you need hydrogen and oxygen that comes in that you breathe in to create that deuterium depleted water. And so if you've got food that's got more parts per million that need to be removed, obviously there's going to be more work that the body has to do in order to basically deplete. And that's why your levels of deuterium can vary in your urine from anywhere from 150 to 300 parts per million, depending on what you eat. And that's why I say it's not very safe to basically consume urine, because you're putting deuterium back. The body's trying to get rid of it. Why the fuck are you putting it back? And some people say, oh, you get all these other electrolytes. I mean, for fuck, just eat properly and you won't have a problem.
Yeah, I don't think you should need to know about deuterium to know not to drink your own urine.
Yeah. I mean, there's the other problem that that not only how can I put it? Not only a lot of people think I think it's a myth. A lot of people think that basically that urine is completely sterile. It's not either. It still has some bacteria in it. So that's beyond the sort of deuterium side of things. And so a lot of people have all these assumptions, and I'm going, no, they're not actually really right in that regard. I don't know where this, honestly, do you actually know where this culture came from to drink urine, or is there a...
I have no idea. I first started seeing it coming out of plant-based communities, people doing urine therapy, but...
Okay. So it's basically ex-vegans that have come over to the carnivore community that brought some of these habits with them.
I mean,
Doesn't
like everybody,
surprise me.
I had heard of people drinking urine in like extreme survival situations and such.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I ever gave it much credence as a health plan.
Well, that's the thing. It's funny how the vegans will literally jump up and down on poor epidemiological studies, junk science, and then at the same time, a lot of them basically come with these sort of wacko-dacko type traditions, plus flat Earth type behaviors and all that.
There are people who do fermented urine therapy, which is that's another level, and that's like aging their own pee in jars and then consuming it or applying it to their bodies topically. And I don't know.
Oh god!
If it helps give you some relief from suffering, then I guess far be it from me to judge. But I won't be drinking my own rotten piss. Thanks.
Yes. God Almighty, that's next level. That's fermenting urine. That is definitely next level.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a joke.
Yes, just crazy, So it's Oh, look, a lot of these crack pottery ideas, there may be small bits of truth, like, the electrolyte thing, or, small little bits, but, really, it's like people can say, well, you need this or that, but, at the end of the day, you can get it from just normal food, so.
I feel like it's a waste product. It smells foul. It tastes foul for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we're not meant to be consuming that sort of stuff. I mean, if we were, a long time ago, even the nutritional experts would have been recommending it if there was really strong evidence, But there's next to no evidence. I don't think anybody would do a study anyway. Jogging outside wearing masks. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're just afraid of being accosted by somebody. I don't think that they actually.
Yeah, look.
Actually, I see people wearing a mask alone in their car driving. So.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that is really weird. I can understand if you're basically where there's a lot of people and all that, especially in high dense population sort of areas like China, Japan, areas like that. But there are many other places where there is so little density. I mean, why bother?
Yeah,
it's a bit of an overkill.
I feel like it's almost again, it's just people that are trying to make sure that they don't get bothered by other people that are trying to shame them for not doing their civic duty and being the three buzzwords I keep hearing are irresponsible, reckless, and selfish.
Yep, precisely.
So they'll just put on gloves and a mask as soon as they leave the house, and they won't take them off again until they get back to their house. But they're not washing their gloves in between use, I doubt, and they're not
they
sanitizing their gloves between their car and every store, so they're not actually doing everything they can to prevent the spread. It's purely just about making sure that they fit in.
And that's the sort of funny thing is that a lot of people, it's not as if they're going out of their way to do certain things. It's just really sort of weird behavior we're seeing. Certain things, yes, are justified, but certain behavior is just, you go, why?
The paranoia is
it's really weird sort of thing.
Spending a couple of days a week on a farm about an hour out of town. That's in a fairly rural area, just a small family farm, and that is
people are normal.
Great for my sanity, because people are a lot more normal. Yeah, the further you get out of the urban centers, the more life is how I remember it.
Yes, it definitely is like that. Sort of, it's really sort of weird, the actual general behaviour. Any other questions, guys? There's a lot of comments people are making about a lot of different things. All sorts about young age and relationships and all sorts of things, but right at the bottom, I think they're pretty much. I think they're ignoring us completely. Not even one question.
To each other too.
That's true. Exactly.
But yeah, I think I need to get going to bed soon. I'm wiped from my fast, and
it's past 3 o'clock anyway, so it's usually I've already passed the 3 o'clock threshold, which I usually keep these now.
Well, because I'll try to get on for the first hour or so rather than popping in.
That'd be good. That'd be definitely good. Look, had a great time. Thanks for your appearance.
Oh yeah, no problem. I wanted to show some good faith here. I could have gone to bed as soon as I got home, but
look. As I said, I didn't know. As I said to the guys, I said I don't know whether you were tired, you had other family things that you had to deal with and stuff like that. I mean,
yeah, we're all human. I had to go look after my mom a little bit with her ankle.
Exactly. I hope she gets better.
Yeah.
I mean, so also, I mean, because at the moment it's in a cask, so she can't really do a lot of things with it. Is that right? She's
Yeah, it's a soft cast, so it's like
okay.
it's bandaged up, and she can take it off if she wants to. I guess she was told, but she's gonna leave it on for a week or so.
Yep. That's fine, and basically, things like Epsom salt type things are pretty good as well for that sort of healing sort of side as well. So
Yeah,
to be
unfortunately, she
considered.
won't listen to me about
Yeah,
things
look,
that
yeah,
far,
I know.
but I can just try to offer my services to
Yeah.
minimize her stress on other things like carrying things up the stairs for
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Oh, look, I know. I mean, even with my dad, it's been a slow progression of me suggesting things or buying things and just leaving them at his place, and then he does something with them,
Yeah.
or so like, and that's how I sort of, by turning up initially, I used to give him coconut oil, to try and reduce his the olive oil usage. And then I started adding other things, just dropping them and saying, Dad, check, try this out. It's quite nice and all that. And, getting him, and even I bought him a really high quality ghee. So it's one from Byron, but it's about $37 or whatever. But it's a nice big tub. And I said, just take that and use that, rather than, I said, don't use the olive oil, Dad. I just said, use this. It's really good. And so he took it, which is good. So he'll use that. And it's just stuff like that. That's sort of, it's little bits, little pieces. Sometimes just buying them, like ghee. And as you say, oh, it's clarified butter. And I usually, say to people, just tell them, oh, a lot of the vegetarians in southern India use it. And immediately they go, vegetables, vegetarian, must be healthy.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? It's all, I know, I'm telling people how to misdirect their parents. Bad boy Harry. Yeah, but you got to do something somehow, so yes, it's not very easy in that regard.
No, it's my family thinks I'm crazy for eating the way I do.
Look, my dad, for a long time, he had similar opinions, and I sort of hid it from him for a while so I wouldn't upset him. And then eventually, I started turning up, and I'm going, I'm not going to have any more of these cheats. And I said, no, Dad, I don't want any, just the meat. And now he's got used to me, doing that, and it's less of an issue. So
Yeah, on the flip side, the farm that I've been helping out, they are completely on board with eating the way that I do because I buy all of my meat from them. Right? So
they're motivated.
they feed me lunch. They're very accommodating.
Yeah, it's very nice to have that sort of relationship. Not everybody can. I'm sort of lucky. Yeah. I don't need to have that in Tasmania because I can just access. There's so many sources. For me, it's all and it's just small little farm businesses that sell through a number of stores, and these stores basically are specialty type stores that buy it. And the reality is, in terms of kilograms, like I'll give you an example. You may have a difference of $1 to $3 difference depending on what type of meat it is per kilo. It's not a massive, at getting half a kilo, a nice big steak, 500 grams of steak. I'm gonna be paying, something like, and that's just to explain to people. That's basically so 1 kilo is 2.2, sort of pounds, or so it's basically like pretty much a pound of meat, as an example, which would be 450 something, and it's usually the sort of size that I'll have. And it's, a couple of dollars, and it's not that expensive in comparison. So the difference may be about $2 or $3 between the supermarket version and so sort of the grass, the sort of the grass fed that they actually talk about, and the pastured stuff that I buy, organic, pastured, blah blah, and there's about per kilo $2 difference.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's
I live in a
local.
small city that's kind of surrounded by farms, and so a lot of the supermarkets just stock standards,
Mm.
large distributor kind of meats. So there isn't a good selection for high quality at the stores that are open right now. Now that never used to be a problem because there were a few farmers markets around with a fairly good selection of some meats. But now you have to go straight to the farmers. But from what I hear from the local beef producers, the local meat producers in general, I guess that's actually been really good for them. That they've had a huge increase in demand. So I feel lucky to have the relationship I do with this source of food that I get it from,
Yeah,
because
and
they I'm one customer that they prioritize keeping happy, where there's when they sell out for other people. So
what sort of meats do you primarily get from them?
uh,
Oops.
I just got spinning circles. Yeah, mostly grass-fed beef and pastured eggs and pastured pork and some nice fatty steaks, rib steaks.
Yeah, I have to say I love pork. I know a lot of people go, oh, beef and all that. And if I was basically told for a year, because I don't think it's optimal. I think you need to have diverse foods. I don't even think beef on its own is optimal. You can survive on it, but it's not optimal. In terms of but if I was told you can only have this, you're on a desert island, you've basically been abandoned there, and we can't get to you for a year, and we can drop only one type of meat via a plane to you.
I know what I would choose. You would choose
Guess what?
pork?
Yeah, I'd be. What about yourself?
Oh, I would choose. If I get to be picky, I would choose fatty ribeye steaks.
Yep, fair enough. Yeah, I would pick pork. That's what I'd pick. I have to say I love pork. So it's just, look, I've grown up on it.
I do like pork, but beef is my mainstay.
Pork's a very Greece. There's a couple of the northern part of Greece has a bit of beef. The northeast of Athens is an island there. They have from ancient times a very big sort of beef type production, but most of the rest of Greece is pork and lamb and goat. So pork from the west coast that I come from was pork and lamb were the most sort of, unless you went up to the mountainous areas, though it was more pork and goats. In the lowlands you tend to have more pork and lamb. And I just that's one thing. Even the on the actual stick skewered, it was primarily all the skewered stuff is all pork primarily. And I used to just go and get all these skewered sort of pieces of meat that I love them with a bit of lemon juice on them. And I used to consume. I'd go with my bicycle, stop there, grab two, and take off, and that was my lunch. As a youngster, I just love that.
I'm very glad I didn't choose to continue fasting until tomorrow right now, or else I would not be able to handle this conversation.
Look, sometimes there is a limit to fasting, as I said earlier to the guys.
Yeah, no, especially where I'm pretty thin, pretty lean naturally. I don't want to push it too far to tank my hormones and that kind of thing.
Are you trying to do a 3-day fast to just reset your immune system at the moment?
Yeah, and just it's something I try to do like quarterly, I guess. And I hadn't done one since New Year's, and so it was about time. And I was just finding my mood was sort of dragging a little bit, and the fast really picked it up. I was feeling quite good, and I was able to go about 8 hours longer than my last one, I guess. So the goal will be to just put on a little bit more mass over the next couple of weeks and to a month, and see where I'm at. And the next time I fast, I'm going to shoot for. I'd like to try to do 100 hours at some point, but right around the 80-hour mark seems to be good for me. I really noticed a big difference in how I feel after, in 60 hours or so. Like the second half of the third day, I really start feeling a lot better.
Precisely.
So I usually push it to like another half day beyond 3 days, just because I tend to stop eating later in the evening when I start the fast. So then to begin refeeding again later in the evening there's not enough time really to get a good meal in before bed.
It can also play a role. like for instance, this time that I did my 3.5 day fast, which was about 80 something hours, I've sort of, I know what you mean, that zone where you get into it, where you go, oh, I could go on for a bit longer, but I said, no, I'm not,
Yeah.
I've got my reset. I'm in an environment where there are, there's, potential disease, and your white blood cells, count goes down. So I need to basically start refeeding and rebuilding. Yep. And, those 2 days, need at least 2 days of good rebuilding to basically be back in the safe zone in terms
it's funny.
of...
I notice how I feel a little bit more run down for the first day or two when I wake up in the morning, especially. Yep. It's generally better as the day goes on, but I almost feel like I'm coming down with a cold or something when I first wake up.
Precisely. Yep.
But then by the third day, I start feeling that feeling kind of goes away.
Now, the best way to actually...
I probably would have gone for maybe 4.5 days, but...
Yeah. But the best way to actually deal with that in the early stage, I didn't do it this time, but normally if I'm going to when I do these, because it just... I was working at the same time and I couldn't actually get the time. Normally I would do this on the weekend where I've got my own free time. And so those first 2 days, I would go out and do quite a lot of exercise and lift weights and walk quite a bit to drain down my glycogen levels, pushing myself into ketosis much quicker within 24 hours. And then basically I noticed less of a dip and more energy, and it sort of seems to carry me much better through that 3.5 day or whatever compared to this time.
Glycogen before you start the fast?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really has to do with that, because the body's still got a certain level of glycogen, and it's going, if you really deplete glycogen, it's got no option. It has to do something, and it just basically is forced. Triglycerides go up, free fatty acids, into the bloodstream, elevate quite rapidly because the body realizes it needs to protect itself. It needs glucose, demand-driven glucose, and it needs extra energy. When you're in the middle area, the body basically, there's possibly a bit too much insulin still in there, hasn't been suppressed enough to push glucagon sufficiently up to force more gluconeogenesis and force also more free fatty acid into the bloodstream. And that's where you get that sort of thing. But I couldn't help myself because I was working. I couldn't get away to do these long, because I've done it before where I've basically just lifted weights and I've gone for like 3-hour walks, this big depleting sort of, where I've literally worked through a lot of my glycogen, liver glycogen, muscle glycogen, and forced my body into a ketotic state and a very high ketotic state much earlier. And usually I don't get those effects, those sort of lethargic type effects in that regard. So that's how I've done it in the past, and it does work.
Yeah,
but you have to have the free time.
Right. Yeah, the time, the 3 hours to go for the walk.
Yeah, and usually I do it over 2 days. Yeah,
I have noticed that I do better with the fast when I time it over a period that I'll be lightly active. I suppose that would sort of play into what you're saying.
Yeah, you weren't that active. No, I really push up my activity level in those first 2 days, and then I just drop it off after because I don't need it.
Yeah.
It's just those two, because you don't want to put too much stress on your body as well, because you're already, by fasting, you're putting. So it's probably 1.5 to 2 days, depending on the activity level. But that first day is where I really hammer it, and it seems to make the difference. Then I can just drop off. Sometimes I'll do a second day a bit, like in the mornings. Sometimes I won't, because I already feel, I've switched. I'm in a deep ketosis, and I know it, and at that point I go, no need to stress the body anymore. Let's just relax and just let the free fatty acids provide the energy for the next couple of days. Mm-hmm. And that's the sort of approach that I take in playing with that sort of thing. That's it. Salt and magnesium is what I use. Try and get your magnesium from food. You don't need as much, and potassium you don't need as much.
Yeah, I
More salt to maintain those things in.
yeah, I salt my water to taste, and I put about a half a teaspoon of no salt potassium chloride per liter of water. But I usually don't need that until the second or second and a half day of a fast. And then I really find that it helps to pick me up if I start feeling, not faint, but a little bit flat, I guess.
Yes, yeah. Look, but and that's the thing that I tend to nowadays just salt. Sometimes I'll use a bit of cream of tartar because we get enough potassium. If you're consuming quite a bit of dairy, you need more salt than potassium because you're getting you have a big steak, you'll probably end up getting about 1,300. You have quite a couple of glasses of milk and stuff like that, and some other foods, you'll probably end up getting into the 2.5. So if you're somebody who's around, that 1.5%, you need a 1,700 calories for the day. You're looking at 24 to 2,500, milligrams of basically of the potassium itself. You don't need basically these high levels, the 4,700s or whatever. It should be based on your calorie requirements for your size, like we do with animals. So if you're basically you're getting enough dairy in there, enough meat in there, you technically should get enough potassium. As long as you're getting the right potassium for your size, your weight, your size as a human animal, and you're getting that amount, then all you need to basically then is focus on the salt, because your insulin is going to be lower on our sort of diet. Focus on the salt to keep those electrolytes in, to prevent, because if you don't get enough salt, you lose more sodium. With sodium, you lose magnesium and potassium because you've got very lower insulin.
What do you think of adding environmental hormesis to a fast to increase energy demand and increase the rate of the fast?
What sort of type of hormesis would be talking?
Some people do like heat exposure or like intense exercise while fasting to try to.
I think it's okay in the early parts. But I wouldn't do it chronically through because it puts too much stress on the body. It increases cortisol far more and puts far more to stress, and it's far more catabolically damaging. Also, and affects to the thyroid as well. So I don't usually recommend it. I usually recommend in the early stages more to deplete glycogen stores, and then basically to really, reduce the tempo. So at the end of the day, if you're breaking down tissue, to rebuild tissue, you need food. Simple as that. So I think that's really the wrong way to go about it. And I think it's too stressful on the body. It's negative to the thyroid as well. So I would basically keep it simple. And basically people used to use basically that sort of experience of fasting. They used it for meditation. They didn't use it to go out and fucking do 100 miles, run or something.
The mental clarity that increases
exactly.
the fast is very remarkable.
They used it for meditation. They used it for basically being able to. It was also used for religious people, like purification, clearing out your mind, calming yourself, and all this sort of stuff. And that's the whole purpose of calming and using the energy from free fatty acid to basically, and if you get enough salt in there to maintain your electrolytes, also sodium suppresses cortisol and also reduces uric acid as well. So, you want to regulate that, you need more salt, So that's the trick. You maintain all your other electrolytes. You suppress uric acid, levels from being too elevated, from free fatty acid, utilization, and you basically also keep cortisol under much lower levels, So that is why the extra sodium in, sodium type water type things, that's the sort of best approach. And I think most people will find that, and also use it as an opportunity to do some mindful thinking, for yourself to sort of calm yourself down, to basically contemplate about your own life and many other things. And, it can be a sort of a useful time to basically for your own, healing and your own sort of ability to improve the way you feel about yourself as well. There's a lot of that. It's a lot of people are focused on
the big reason that I did this most recently.
Yeah, people are too focused on sort of losing weight. They're all, it's just all crazy. Oh, I need to fast. I need to fucking do a marathon. I need to do this. And I'm going, that's not, calm down, relax, contemplate, the universe, yourself, your life in it, basically, chill out
just do a whiskey fast and then you won't give a shit. Whiskey fast.
You and me. I could go for that.
There's another name for that. People usually just call it a bender.
Yes.
But I don't. I felt so good from this fast that I sometimes go long enough between them that I feel doubtful of whether I'll feel good enough for a fast to justify doing it. And again, where I'm a fairly lean person, I'm not looking to lose weight, right? So,
yep.
I find the longer I go without a fast, then the less likely the less I feel like doing it again. So I was glad that I pushed myself to do it this time, and I'm thinking that I won't go as long before doing it again the next time. I'm just gonna watch my weight and see once I get back to where I was, which probably won't take more than 3 or 4 days, and then I'll just see how I feel and hit it up for another one maybe in 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, if you look at the Greek Orthodox sort of tradition, 200 days of fasting, that's more than half the year. So
yeah,
and that's basically, and that's that heavily, a lot of that. There are more stricter fasts, but the majority of that is basically like severe time restricted. So you only once for that day, and then all the other like 24 hours, you're not eating at all. So it's basically a severe time restricted type fast. But it's it has a lot of health benefits when you follow it. You'd have to look at the old people in Greece. Some of the islanders tend to be more religious, that have these longevity sort of curves, and people think it's their diet or the olive oil. Nope, it's all this damn fasting, and because their diet is also much lower in terms of the sort of it's less sugary. It's they don't these older people, they're not into the sort of into any fast foods or sweet things or sweeteners or
which
all
would
this
really
other crap.
Make fasting easier too.
Exactly, yeah. Because you're on low glycemic type foods, it's sort of low glycemic vegetables, seafood, a lot of animal products and stuff like that when you're feeding. And when you're fasting, you're basically on that meal, you're having basically low glycemic vegetables, and that's it. So you're basically in a catabolic state, and you're basically, possibly even producing ketones in that sort of stage. Like somebody on a keto diet. They don't call it that, they ignore that side of things. But, and also mTOR and IGF-1 will be much lower, less pronounced. So it makes a big difference for these populations. They're not, take a look at the Okinawans. When we talk about the Randall cycle, what do they say? Until you're 80% full, when you still feel a bit hungry. So what are they doing? They are preventing themselves from engaging the Randall cycle. So even though they have some carbs in there and all that, and they're all low glycemic, they're not engaging the Randall cycle. As a consequence, they do fasts and stuff like that for their religious reasons and all that. They're not engaging the Randall cycle for most of the year. Well, and then you wonder why they basically live so long. It's not the food. It's all these other traditions.
The Okinawans specifically also had a good heritage pork breed that was basically slaughtered by the Americans during the occupation of Japan, and during World War II, and then when they were all of this trend was measured, they were on effectively a vegetarian diet that wasn't what they had been eating.
Precisely. Yeah. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is that they actually have a saying: we start the day, not the morning, the day with pork, and we end the day with pork.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, it's a very important food. And the other angle of that is pork is the lowest insulinogenic food. It has also lower deuterium than any other ruminant meat. So it's got lower deuterium than any other ruminant meat, and it's also got the lowest insulin effect. So when you combine it with carbs and you don't engage the Randall cycle, you can see that you can get sort of a certain amount of benefits that actually outweigh some of the negatives in the diet. So some of the, the oxalates or stuff like that.
Right.
So we did, when you actually view, I'm not talking about here, optimal, so you don't have any oxalates or stuff like that, like we would do. But at the same time, if you sit around, downing meat like there's no tomorrow, and you're in a high anabolic state continuously, you're not going to live long. I don't care whether you're carnivore, keto, or whatever. If you're knocking back more energy than your body requires, and you're engaging the Randall cycle, you will be in trouble long term. You're putting all these bodily parts under stress, and they can't go into autophagy. They can't clear out the junk out of the cells. They build up. Yep. The cells become damaged and senescent over time, and you age.
So eating a large caloric surplus on a, say, standard diet, whether you just get obese or whether you're a bodybuilder and you're eating the same foods, your life expectancy is kind of similar.
Yep. Look, exactly. I mean, we have to be honest about these things. There's a difference between optimal, that a carnivore diet or a diet that's heavily in animal products is going to be much better for your body, providing the substrates that the body needs to build proper good tissue and all that, and provide, all what the body needs. And there's a difference from going too far and not basically, providing and being careful with your body in the sense of giving your body enough what it needs to basically function properly. And most of these societies, they had certain things. I mean, like the Okinawans and most of these populations, they had enough varied animal foods like seafood, crustaceans, certain other foods. They still had a bit of beef, a bit of chicken here, eggs. If you take a look at Southeast Asia, for instance, every single meal they have one egg. You'd have a little sort of if you go to Indonesia, for instance, there's leaves. They wrap it around in leaf the traditional way. Nowadays they use other material, which is, they've gone away from the traditions to some extent. But some of them you can still find with a traditional way of leaves. And in the middle, you've basically got a small portion of rice, a small portion of, then you've got a whole lot of different meats. And sometimes it's on the, like barley, you'll find like fish and chicken combined, and then some vegetables and a bit of chili or whatever. So basically, and an egg on top, and that's wrapped and given to you. So basically, you're getting, if you're getting some energy from the that you're gonna, because most of these people that buy this sort of stuff, in these sort of countries, they work their body quite a bit, so they will deplete this glycogen. They will use this glycogen up, because it's only a small portion. It's not a massive like we eat like there's no tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And they'll have some vegetables, which is a filler. They may get some nutrients because they're all cooked, which means when you cook something, you release more of the nutrients. You break down some of the oxalates. You break down some of these anti-nutrients. So you release some stuff from there, and then they've got basically the animal products that's combined in that, a third sort of thing. So. Yep, they're not using as much fat, but that's because they don't have in their environment, they don't have a lot of ruminant animals, and a lot of them are poor and they can't afford this sort of stuff to get that energy from a better source. Mm-hmm. But because they're doing all these physical activities, They're not eating to beyond the Randall cycle effect. And they're also fasting periodically, Ramadan and many other things. And so as a consequence, they're not as unhealthy. But now that they've moved into the middle classes, they work in an office and they eat a whole bowl of rice, same sort of stuff, but bigger quantities and do less of physical activity and all that, they're all getting diabetic. Different practices, different lifestyle. So all these things have an effect. We're not talking about optimal here. We're talking about what the optimal foods. We're talking about that in certain historical times and practices and social behavior, certain things are not as bad as we think.
Yeah. Well, I think I need to call it a night, Harry.
Okay, mate. I'll go through the last ones and then I'll call it a night over the next couple of minutes. Thanks for being on here. I appreciate you turning up, considering your mum's issue as well. Hope she gets well soon.
That's no big deal.
Yep. Anyway, thanks, mate.
Thank you for having me as always, and I'll see you next week.
Problem.
And like I said, I'll try to make it on for the first hour or so of the chat too.
Yeah, no pressure. Whatever you can. Always appreciated. Okay, take care, mate, and see you.
Thanks, Harry. See you later.
Anyway, back to me. Okay. Stop the fast, extremely cold. My hands and feet freezing. Yeah, look, and that's you want to be very careful sometimes. They're not going to extreme levels. Sometimes if you've basically been calorie restricting for too long, and Jared is right, could be a thyroid thing. For too long, if you're doing too much food restrictions, that can actually have an effect, or some of the nutrients that support the thyroid, which is your iodine, selenium, zinc, cholesterol as well, all those sort of things. If you're not getting enough, they can actually have an effect as well. Everybody thinks about, iodine, but it's not only iodine. You still need selenium, zinc as well. Selenium and zinc play a role in the conversion of T4 to T3. So you still need these other things as well, and sufficient nutrients to support your body. Thyroid blood test is always good. With iodine, just seafood, eggs have got iodine, some of the organ meats as well, so keep that in mind. Cool issues. Hold on. When I started, general issue with cold out fit for a long time until I don't go crazy. It's better to get, if you're deficient, use it for a certain amount of time, but then ease off it, because you can go the other way into hyperthyroidism, from hypo to hyper. And if you're not in that sweet spot, you can also get the effects, which are very similar and slightly different in some other respects. So it's not a very healthy thing for the thyroid. So I tend to basically say stick to the foods that are that have got good iodine levels, and you won't do bad in that regard. So fix the deficiency and then just stick to the foods. Okay, winter, my cold feet. Well, we all feel cold in winter. Okay, quickly. And you say Sean Baker is going too far on a carnivore diet in terms of reducing his life expectancy. No, I didn't say that. Because basically what his requirements are and his physical activity is a different point. I don't know exactly what quantities he consumes. He's a big man. What you see him consuming, he's a very large person. So he's got far more tissue to maintain. So what he needs to eat compared to me or yourself or anyone else is a completely different thing. He may be basically just getting enough or even slightly less than what he requires. Because remember, recently he's lost a bit of weight. So he is actually probably not getting enough nutrition. So I wouldn't actually just jump on that bandwagon just because you see somebody eating a lot. Their caloric requirements the amount of nutrients they require and protein they require for their muscle tissue that they've got to maintain may be much higher than yours or mine or whatever. So, unless you know details, you've got to be very careful not to jump the gun on these sort of things. Yep. Cheers to Jared, definitely. Not a problem, mate. I'm going to basically, it's getting close to 4 hours now, so I better wind it up as well, because I do need the time for my other streams, because I only get 20 hours from StreamYard, so I can't go too far. Thanks, guys, for being here. Please like and share this this video and any of my other stuff that you enjoy, that other people that are your friends may enjoy as well. All the support is appreciated, and thanks for for the diehards that have stayed for this long. I know it's sometimes hard for everyone, depending on their time zone, so I appreciate it very much. Take care, and guys, I'll see you next week, and we'll chat again. Good night, good day, wherever you are, and take care, and bye.